The light in the HR office hummed pale and flat, making everything on the table look washed out, even the thick cream paper with the North River logo at the top. The termination letter lay between them like it had its own gravity. Ethan Ward kept his hands on his knees, fingers curling and uncurling against the rough denim. His name sat in bold at the top of the page. At the bottom, in tight, clean pen strokes, was hers. Madison Reyes, Director of Human Resources. She had a pen in her hand, but she was not using it anymore. She held it like a prop, something to grip so her fingers would not fidget. Behind her, a small red light blinked on the security camera in the corner of the ceiling. "Ethan," she said, her voice steady, almost gentle. "You have the right to review the report again if you wish, but the decision has been finalized." He looked at the letter, not at her. The words blurred, though he already knew what they said. Violations of company policy, hostile behavior, threatening a coworker, tampering with time records. He had read those lines 3 times already when they gave him the report 2 days ago. They still rang in his ears in the same flat corporate wording. "Did you read it yourself?" he asked. "Or just the summary?" Madison hesitated. It was the smallest pause, but in the quiet room it felt loud. "I read the report," she said. "The documentation meets the criteria for termination under our handbook. You signed the acknowledgement form when you were hired." That handbook. The binder they all got on the first day, thick as a brick, full of rules no one had time to memorize. It was written in the same tone as the letter in front of him, perfectly neutral, perfectly sure of itself. He forced his eyes down to the paper again. The paragraph about severance, 2 weeks. The line about his health insurance ending at the end of the month. The note about the right to appeal, which he knew meant nothing without a lawyer he could not afford. "Do you have any questions?" Madison asked. He let the question sit. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. The heater rattled in the corner. Somewhere down the hall a phone rang twice, then stopped. He swallowed. "What happens to my badge?" he asked. "We will deactivate it at the end of the day," she said. "You will need to return it before you leave the building. Security will escort you to your locker." He nodded. "Can I finish the shift?" Her eyes flicked to his face for the first time in several minutes. He saw the conflict there, or thought he did before it vanished beneath the professional mask again. "I'm afraid not," she said. "You will need to collect your things and exit the premises today. Today. Not next week, not after Christmas, not after he figured out a plan. Today." "Okay," he said. His voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "Guess that answers everything." He reached out and finally picked up the letter. The paper was thicker than he expected. Expensive stock, smoother than anything he had at home. It felt wrong that something so polished could carry so much damage. His name, her signature, the neat company logo at the top. 3 simple things that together had just knocked the ground sideways. "Good luck, Mr. Ward," Madison said. He almost laughed at that, but he kept the sound inside his teeth. He tucked the letter into the manila envelope she slid across, then stood. For a moment, neither of them moved. The camera light blinked again in the corner of the room, a small red pinprick watching. He turned toward the door. As his hand closed on the handle, Madison spoke again. "For what it is worth," she said quietly, "these decisions are never easy." He did not turn around. "For me," he said, "they are." The hallway outside felt colder than the office. The industrial carpet swallowed his footsteps. On the wall, framed posters carried slogans about integrity and safety, the kind of things that always looked better in a font than in reality. Ethan walked past the break room, past the vending machines humming beneath their neon displays. His badge still worked for the locker room. He emptied his locker in under a minute. Work gloves, a lunchbox with half a sandwich inside, a photo of Lily that had curled slightly at the corners. She was 3 in that picture, cheeks round, hair escaping its ponytail. She had a smear of chocolate on her mouth and both hands in the air reaching for him. He took the photo and slipped it carefully into his wallet. Outside the locker room, Frank was waiting, leaning against the wall, the older man's straightened coffee cup dangling from his fingers. "You done already?" Frank asked. That meeting was fast. "Yeah," Ethan said. Frank watched his face. His eyes dropped to the envelope in Ethan's hand. "Ah, hell," he muttered. "They really pulled the trigger." "Looks like it." Frank glanced toward the HR office, then toward the camera on the ceiling. "This about that argument with Trent?" he asked. "Guy has been gunning for you for months." Ethan did not answer. He did not trust his voice. Frank lowered his own, suddenly cautious. "Paper says you are the problem," he said. "But I have worked with you 3 years, kid. I know who does the fixing around here." He nodded toward the envelope. "Thing about paper," Frank added, is it feels heavier than people, even when it is lying. Ethan exhaled slowly. They already shut off my badge after I turn it in, he said. You can get in trouble just for talking to me. I get in trouble for everything, Frank snorted. This one I can live with. For a second, the tension in Ethan's chest loosened. He managed a small, tired smile. Take care, Frank. You too, the older man said. And hey, you find something better than this place, you remember us little people. Ethan made his way to the front desk, turned in his badge, and signed the last line on a form he did not bother reading. The receptionist gave him a look that was half sympathy, half company protocol. Then the automatic doors slid open, and the winter air hit him full in the face. The cold outside was real, in a way the office never was. It bit at his ears, his fingers the skin under his jaw. Snow had started to fall again, light flakes drifting through the gray afternoon. He pulled his coat tighter, slipped the envelope flat against his chest under the zipper, as if he could hide it from the world by pressing it closer to his heart. The parking lot stretched out rows of cars dusted with white. He walked to his rusted blue sedan, brushing snow from the windshield with his sleeve. The metal beneath his palm burned with cold. He sat behind the wheel and let his forehead rest against it for a moment. The numbers lined themselves up in his head unbidden. Last paycheck coming on Friday. 2 weeks of severance. Rent due on the 1st. Food, heat, gas. The thin cushion in his checking account that would not cushion anything for long. He turned the key. The engine coughed, shuddered, and then caught. The heater wheezed to life, blowing air that was barely warmer than the outside. He checked the time on the dashboard. He was already almost late. Lily got out of school at 3:15. She liked it when he parked in the same spot near the maple tree that had lost all its leaves months ago and now stood with white clinging to its branches. On the drive to the elementary school, the sky darkened to shade, the snow thickening just enough to blur the lines on the road. His wipers squeaked back and forth, leaving streaks. He pulled into the familiar lot with 2 minutes to spare. Parents were already gathering in puffy coats and knit hats, blowing into their hands, stamping their feet. He slid the envelope under his thigh on the seat, grabbed his gloves, and got out. Inside the schoolyard, the bell rang. The door burst open, and a river of kids in colorful jackets spilled out, voices rising high into the cold air. He spotted Lily almost immediately. She had a pink beanie with a pom-pom on top and a backpack with silver stars. She saw him at the same time and lifted an arm, waving wildly. Dad. She barreled across the snow boots, kicking up little sprays of white, and flung herself at him. He caught her, easily lifting her off the ground. For the first time that day, something inside him felt solid. You are freezing, he said, kissing her forehead. Her nose was red eyes bright. You are late, she declared, even though he was not. Traffic, he lied. All the snowflakes slowed me down. She giggled and wriggled until he set her back on her feet. She slipped her small hand into his without thinking, like she always did, like she always had. Guess what? She said as they started toward the car. Mrs. Hammond said our class is doing the Christmas play Friday night. I get to be a snowflake. A snowflake, huh? Yeah, I have to twirl and not bump into anybody. She said that is very important. I believe in you, he said. Will you come and watch, and you have to sit in the front? Mrs. Hammond said parents can take pictures. The question slid in soft, carried on her excitement, but it hit him like ice water. I will be there, he said. There was no space between the words, no room for a maybe. She squeezed his fingers. You promise? I promise. They reached the car. He opened the passenger door for her. As she climbed in, the envelope shifted on the seat, its corner poking out white against the dark fabric. Lily's eyes flicked toward it. What's that? She asked. Just work stuff, he said, picking it up in one quick movement. He folded it once and shoved it into the inside pocket of his coat. The paper crackled against the lining. Nothing important. She accepted that without a thought, already busy digging in her backpack for a crumpled drawing she wanted to show him. Crayons, stick figures, a house with smoke curling from the chimney, 3 figures standing under a big green triangle with lights. That is you and me and the tree, she explained. When we get it. He nodded, throat tight. Looks perfect, he said. He pulled his seatbelt on, started the car, and eased out of the parking lot while Lily talked about costumes and glitter and fake snow. Fake snow on the stage. The envelope pressed against his ribs with every turn of the wheel. It felt heavier than it should, as if the words inside had weight. He kept his eyes on the road, hands steady on the wheel, listening to his daughter plan a future he had not yet figured out how to pay for. By late afternoon, the sky over Minneapolis had dropped lower, a heavy gray lid pressing down on the city. The snow that had started as a light drift outside the school thickened into steady flakes, soft and slow, spinning down in a constant curtain. Lily had her face almost pressed to the passenger window. "It looks like the world is in a snow globe," she said. "Can we go downtown and see the lights? Please." Sarah said the market is open, and they have caramel apples and a big tree. Ethan kept his eyes on the road. Streetlights were already flicking on in a line, halos of yellow in the white air. "We should go home," he said. "I need to make dinner." "We have pasta at home," she answered without missing a beat. "Pasta is fast. Please, Dad, just for a little bit. We can share one hot chocolate. I will not even ask for marshmallows." She turned toward him, pulling her knit hat down over her ears, so that only her eyes and the tip of her nose showed. Her eyes were the same dark brown as his wide, hopeful. He thought of the envelope in his coat, of the bank balance he had checked that morning, of the rent due date circled in red on the calendar near the fridge. He also thought of the way she had run across the schoolyard shouting his name, like she knew that as long as he was there, everything was fine. "One hot chocolate," he said. "That is the rule, and we park somewhere free." She let out a small shriek of delight and bounced in her seat. "I knew you would say yes. You like the lights too." He did, though he had never said it out loud. When he was a kid, the winter lights downtown had been a free kind of magic. You did not need a ticket for them. You did not need a reservation. They were simply there no matter how broke your family was. He turned off on the exit that led toward Nicollet Mall. Traffic thickened. The city buildings rose around them, glass and steel, catching what little light remained. Snow clung to every ledge. He found a spot 3 blocks away from the market in a space squeezed between a dented pickup and a compact car already half buried. It was the kind of spot no one wanted when it was warm, and everyone took when it was cold because it was free. "Hat, gloves," he said, watching Lily scramble out. "Stay close." The air downtown carried different smells than the neighborhood near their apartment. Here there was the sharp scent of car exhaust and wet wool. Above that floated something sweeter, warmer. Cinnamon, roasting nuts, chocolate. As they turned onto the pedestrian street, the market came into view. Strings of white bulbs hung overhead in long lines crisscrossing between lampposts. Wooden booths lined both sides, each one lit from within small worlds of color and motion. Lily grabbed his hand with both of hers. "It is so pretty," she breathed. Canned music drifted from somewhere, a holiday song he half recognized. People moved in clusters, stamping boots, blowing into their hands, laughing as they passed each other. A little boy dragged a toy sled through the slush, even though there was nowhere to ride it. They approached a booth where a woman in a knit cap was scooping cinnamon sugar over paper cones of roasted almonds. The smell wrapped around them sticky and warm. "You said hot chocolate," Lily reminded herself aloud, as if repeating rules helped keep them both honest. "We are not here for everything." "That is right," Ethan said. They walked past ornaments made of carved wood, glass snowman candles in jars, local art prints, handmade scarves. Lily slowed at every stall, eyes moving hungrily over each display, then pulling herself away. At one booth, a folding table was crowded with small Christmas tree ornaments. Some were painted ceramic, some were clear glass filled with fake snow. In the middle stood a small tray of metal keys, each one tied with red ribbon. Some had tiny snowflakes stamped into the brass. Others had the outline of a house or a car. Lily stopped dead. "Look," she whispered. "They are magic keys." The vendor, an older woman with laugh lines and a wool scarf, smiled. "Holiday keys," she said. "You hang them on your tree and make a wish." Lily picked up one with a little car etched at the top, where a logo might have been. She turned it between her fingers, the metal catching the light from the strings above. "What would you wish for?" Ethan asked. "For us," she said. "For you to have your own place to fix cars. Then you could make cars better all day and not have to work at the factory. And I could sit and draw stuff for the walls." The words hit him in the center of his chest. He had joked once about a small garage of his own late at night, when her mother was still alive, when they had been falling asleep on the sofa with a movie playing in the background. He had not known Lily was listening, tucked against his shoulder. He cleared his throat. "How much are these?" he asked the vendor. $6 each, she said. He did the math without wanting to. $6 was more than 10% of what remained in his wallet after he paid for parking last week and bought groceries. Lily looked from the key to him. Her fingers loosened a little around the ribbon. "It is okay," she said quickly. "We can just look. We were going to get hot chocolate anyway." He saw the way her gaze lingered, though how the idea of the wish had already taken root in her mind. It was not the car she cared about. It was the picture of him in that imaginary shop, tools in his hands, not answering to anyone like Trent. He pulled his wallet out and checked it, as if the numbers might have changed. They had not. "I will take one," he said. He said it lightly, as if it did not matter, as if his heart was not pounding a little faster. The woman wrapped the key in thin tissue and slipped it into a small paper bag. "For the wish," she said. Lily clutched the bag to her chest, as protective as if it held something priceless. "Thank you," she said. They moved on. A booth ahead advertised hot chocolate in bright letters. The line was long, families shuffling from foot to foot, kids bouncing with sugar and cold. Ethan watched the steam rise in white clouds from the paper cups. The sign said $4. He hesitated only half a second before joining the line. "You really do not have to," Lily said. "We already got a key." "That was my wish," he said. "This is yours." When it was their turn, he paid for 1 cup. The vendor filled it nearly to the brim, then swirled whipped cream on top until it towered over the rim. Lily stared at it, eyes wide. "I said no marshmallows," she whispered. "Sometimes the universe gives you an upgrade," the vendor said with a wink. Ethan took the cup, its heat seeping through the cardboard into his fingers. He handed it carefully to Lily. "Both hands," he reminded her. She obeyed, wrapping her small gloved hands around it. She took a cautious sip, then jerked back as whipped cream stuck to the tip of her nose. She burst into giggles. He reached out and wiped the cream away with his thumb. For a moment, the sound of her laughter blurred everything else. The cold, the letter, the numbers marching across the inside of his skull. They all faded against the glow of strings of lights and the warmth in her eyes. "Best hot chocolate ever," she announced. "I will let them know," he said. On the other side of the market, near a booth selling mulled wine, a group of North River managers stood in a loose circle, paper cups in hand. Their coats were expensive wool in colors that did not show salt stains after one wear. Madison stood among them, her camel coat buttoned up to her throat, a burgundy scarf wrapped once around her neck. She listened as one of the production heads told a story about a snowstorm years ago and how the plant had still hit its numbers. She smiled in the right places, nodded at the right details. Her cup of mulled wine had cooled in her hand. She had not tasted it more than once. From where she stood, she could see a wide slice of the market. Families moving between booths, teenagers taking selfies in front of a giant lit snowflake, a street musician with a guitar too cold for its strings. Her gaze drifted restless and snagged on a familiar profile near the hot chocolate stand. Ethan Ward. He was in the same coat he had worn in the office that afternoon. The collar was zipped up all the way. Having seen him only across a polished table under fluorescent light, she was surprised by how different he looked here. He did not seem bigger or smaller, but somehow more solid in the crowd, more anchored. Beside him, a little girl in a pink hat cradled a paper cup in both hands. She laughed at something, tilting her head back so the snowflakes caught in her eyelashes. "That the guy from the floor who blew up at Trent's," someone to Madison's left asked. She realized the question was aimed at her. She did not know the person well. Finance, she thought. His cheeks were already flushing from the drink. "There was an incident," she said. "I cannot discuss details." The man gave a small, satisfied sound. "Some people are not cut out for team environments," he said. Must be nice not having to worry about his temper anymore. Madison looked back toward Ethan. He was bending a little to hear his daughter over the noise, his shoulders rounded against the cold. He took the cup from her so she could pull her mitten back on, then handed it carefully back. His attention was fixed on the girl, focused, gentle. Madison thought of the phrases in the report. Escalating behavior, aggressive tone, threatening posture. Snow gathered in his hair. It melted slowly, leaving darker patches on the worn fabric of his coat. He wiped a bit of whipped cream from the girl's nose with a thumb and pretended to flick it into the air. The girl shrieked with delight, swatting at imaginary cream. Unstable, another word from the report floated up from her memory. The scene in front of her did not fit that word, not in any way that made sense. "You all right, Madison?" one of the other managers asked. "You look like you saw a ghost." "I am fine," she said quickly. Her fingers had gone stiff around the warm paper of her cup. She forced them to relax. Ethan straightened and turned slightly enough for her to see his face in profile. His jaw was set in that same stubborn line she had seen in the office, but his eyes were soft as he looked down at his daughter. Madison felt a small, unwelcome knot of doubt form somewhere under her ribs. She took a sip of her drink finally. It had gone almost cold. Someone changed the subject to holiday bonuses. The conversation shifted around her words, sliding past without sticking. She nodded when it seemed appropriate. After a few more minutes, she murmured an excuse about needing to find a colleague who had lost a scarf and stepped away from the circle. She did not go toward Ethan. She told herself that would be inappropriate, crossing the line between professional and personal, interfering. Instead, she walked along the edge of the market booths, crunching on patches of salted ice, heart beating harder than the situation seemed to merit. At the corner past the last booth, a side street opened toward the loading area of the convention center. Delivery trucks were backed into bays, their rear doors open. Men in hooded sweatshirts and thin gloves were loading equipment from the market, packing away the parts that did not stay out overnight. Madison might have kept walking, except that she recognized the slope of one pair of shoulders among the moving bodies. Ethan was there again, his coat unzipped, now work gloves on his hands, lifting a plastic crate onto a metal ramp. His breath puffed in the cold as he shifted the weight and disappeared briefly into the back of a truck. She stopped, with one foot still on the cleared sidewalk and the other on the gritty snow of the loading zone. The transition from warm light and holiday music to the harsh white beams on the dock was abrupt. The air smelled of diesel and wet cardboard. Ethan reappeared, jogging down the ramp for another crate. He did not look around. His movements were efficient and practiced. No wasted motion, no complaint, no hesitation. She could not hear what anyone was saying over the rumble of engines and the clatter of plastic, but she recognized the rhythm of people who were used to hard work, the kind that left hands cracked no matter how much lotion you used at night. Her hand drifted to the inside pocket of her coat, where a pen and a small notebook usually rested, the same pocket that had held termination letters more than once. Madison pulled her hand back out, empty fingers curling in the cold air. She watched Ethan lift stack shift as snow fell into his hair and melted into the collar of his coat. The hot chocolate he had bought for his daughter would be finished by now. The key she held in her pocket would be warm from her hand. The report she had signed last week said he was a threat around equipment, a danger to colleagues. What she saw in front of her was a man who had lost his job that afternoon and had still gone out to find 4 hours of after-dark work in the freezing wind, rather than go straight home and sit with the weight of it. She stayed longer than she should have, half hidden by the side of a parked truck, the cold creeping into her boots. When she finally turned away, the image of Ethan carrying that crate stayed with her, as stubborn as the red light on the camera in her office blinking in the corner of her mind. The next morning, the building felt like it was still asleep. Madison pulled into the North River parking lot before sunrise, the sky a deep blue that had not yet decided to be day. Snowbanks lined the asphalt, pushed up in ragged walls by the plows during the night. Only a few scattered cars dotted the lot. The security lights thinned out toward the far fence, their circles just barely touching. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of disinfectant and wet rubber from the mats. The fluorescent lights were on, but dimmer somehow, without people underneath them. Her footsteps echoed more than usual. The security guard at the front desk glanced up surprised. "Early start," he said. "Paperwork," she answered, offering a quick smile. She swiped her badge. The small green light flicked on, then off again. That simple flash of approval felt different today. On the second floor, the HR corridor lay mostly in shadow. Only the emergency lights glowed along the walls, soft red against the dark. She flicked on the switch inside her office. The overhead light buzzed to life, spilling flat white over her desk, the bookshelf, the framed certificates that listed her degrees and professional affiliations in looping script. Her coffee mug sat exactly where she had left it yesterday. A small ring of brown at the bottom marked where she had not finished it. She ignored it and set her bag down instead. The file room was at the end of the hall, a place she usually entered with a bored half-focus. Records in, records out, boxes that moved from one shelf to storage without ever feeling like they touched a real person. Today her hand was steady but tight on the knob. The room greeted her with its usual chill. Tall gray filing cabinets stood in rows, the metal drawers labeled with letters and numbers. The fluorescent tubes on the ceiling hummed their light, making the dust in the air look like it was hanging in water. She crossed to the cabinet marked U. Her fingertips stung a little from the cold as she ran them over the labels. Ward Ethan. The folder slid out with a soft scrape of cardboard. It was not thick. 4 years at the company compressed into a slim weight in her hands. She carried it to the lone table in the middle of the room and flipped it open. On top lay the termination paperwork she had signed. Her own name stared back at her from the line at the bottom. She set that page aside, mouth tightening, and turned to the next. The incident report. Printed, stapled, official. She smoothed it with the flat of her hand and read. The words were familiar. She had skimmed them the week before, enough to confirm the right boxes were checked, that there were witness statements attached, that the timeline fit the basic requirements. Enough to feel safe signing. Now in the quiet she saw other things. The margins along the left edge were slightly narrower than the right. The font size shifted by a fraction of a point in the middle of a paragraph, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. The spacing between lines changed near the bottom, crowding together, like someone had tried to squeeze more into the space. She lifted the top corner and caught the texture of the paper between her fingers. It was the same stock they always used. The problem was not the paper, it was what had been laid over it. She read the description again slowly this time. The language was specific. Dates, times, exact phrases allegedly spoken. A description of Ethan leaning over another employee in a way that could be perceived as threatening. A note about raised voices about a clenched fist. There were names listed as witnesses. She recognized one from shipping, one from the assembly line, one from quality control. On the last page, the supervisor's name appeared in print above a scanned signature. Trent Calloway. The ink on her own signature beside HR review completed looked darker than she remembered. Madison closed the folder and carried it back down the hallway to her office. The camera at the far end watched her, its small black eye unblinking. The red recording light blinked slow and steady. At her desk, she woke her computer and logged into the HR system. The screen glowed against the dim light that filtered through the blinds. She typed Ethan's name into the search field. His digital file opened a set of tabs at the top. She clicked on Incident Reports. The document loaded with a slight delay, then popped up in a new window. Here, the margins looked clean. The font was uniform, the spacing neat. Perfect. She clicked on Revision History. A list of entries dropped down. There, in small gray letters, created by T. Calloway, edited by T. Calloway. Calloway. Din 3 days before her signature. Madison frowned. The original creation date was a week earlier. Something had been added or changed just before it crossed her desk. Her mouse hovered over the earlier version. She clicked. The system pulled up an older draft. It still described an incident. The language, however, was looser, fewer specifics, no quoted phrases. Only one name under witness, where the final version had 3. She scrolled slowly, comparing line by line. The accusations in the older draft could have been misinterpretations, frustration taken as aggression, a sharp exchange between 2 coworkers who did not like each other, the kind of thing that usually resulted in a warning or a write-up. The newer version painted a different picture, calculated, dangerous, escalating. Her chest tightened. She navigated to another tab and pulled up Trent's employee profile. His performance reviews his notes. There in the history, she saw the trail she had not looked at for months. Requests to terminate Ethan Ward 4 in the last year. Each one vague. Concerns about attitude. Concerns about reliability. Nothing with dates or quotes. Nothing with witnesses. Each one had her comment attached in tidy system font. Insufficient documentation at this time. Coaching recommended. She sat back in her chair. From the hallway, she could hear the distant sounds of the building waking up. Doors opening, voices, the cleaning crew's cart rolling past. The folder on her desk felt heavier than it had in the file room. She placed one hand flat on top of it and pressed. She could have stopped there, sent an email to legal, opened a formal internal review, let the machine grind forward at its own pace. Instead, she closed the file, picked it up, and stood. The break room smelled like burnt coffee and reheated leftovers. The overhead television was on with the sound muted, showing a weather map with storm systems moving across the Midwest. A handful of employees sat at the small tables, scrolling on their phones or staring into space. Trent stood by the counter, pouring coffee into a travel mug that said "World's Best Boss" in peeling blue letters. The joke was that he had bought it for himself. He was in his usual uniform, a navy button-down and pressed slacks that never seemed to show dust or oil. His hair was neatly parted, not a strand out of place, the same way it had been since the day he was promoted. Madison paused in the doorway. Her hand tightened on the folder until the cardboard edge dug into her palm. "Morning," she said. Trent glanced up. The smile came quick, practiced. "Madison, burning the candle is at both ends, I see. Could we talk for a moment?" she asked. Something flickered behind his eyes. It was gone almost as soon as she noticed it smoothed over into a curious tilt of his head. "Sure," he said. "What is up?" She stepped farther into the room, far enough that the others would have to strain to hear. They did not. Most did not even look up. She set the folder down on the counter, its edge just touching his mug. "Ethan Ward," she said. Trent's eyes flicked to the tab on the folder, then back to her face. "Yeah," he said. "That was a mess. Glad we finally cleaned that up." She opened the folder and pulled out the incident report, laying it flat. "I went back over the file," she said. "The printed version, The digital version, I noticed some discrepancies. He took a sip of coffee, not looking down. Discrepancies, he repeated. The formatting is off, she said. Margins, font size, spacing. It does not match our standard template. The revision history shows you edited the document 3 days before I signed it. He shrugged as if she had commented on a typo. Yeah, I cleaned it up, he said. There were some issues with the layout. You know how these forms get when people copy and paste things. And the witnesses, she asked. 2 of them were not on the same shift as Ethan at the time of the alleged incident. According to the time logs, they were not even in the building. He smiled again, wider this time. People swap shifts, he said. Cover for each other. Maybe the system did not catch it. It always catches it, she said quietly. There was a small silence. Someone behind them opened the microwave, the door thudding shut. Trent set his mug down and leaned a little closer, dropping his voice. Look, he said. You know how this works as well as I do. The guy was trouble, always second-guessing instructions, always making me look bad in front of the crew. This report finally got what we needed in writing. You saw the statements. I talked to one of the people listed, she said. He had no idea his name was attached to any report. The others have conflicting schedules. He watched her for a long moment. The warmth slid out of his eyes while his mouth still held the shape of a smile. You have been busy, he said. I am responsible for the integrity of these files, she replied. If something has been altered, I need to know why. His hand moved to rest on the report palm, pressing down just enough to wrinkle the paper. You signed it, he said. His voice stayed soft. The phrase, however, landed hard. Yes, she said. If there is something wrong with it, he continued still quiet, that is not just on me. It is on you, on HR, on your department. She felt the muscles in her neck tighten. I am aware, she said. Then think about this. His thumb tapped the edge of the paper. We have had 4 safety incidents in the last quarter. The board is on my back about floor discipline. I finally take initiative. I finally get enough documented to deal with a cancer on my team, and now you are telling me you want to poke holes in it, after you approved it, after you presented it as solid. Documented falsification is not initiative, she said. His eyes went cold. Be careful with that word, he said. Falsification is serious. That is the kind of term that if it gets repeated, can damage careers. There is already damage, she answered. Someone lost his job. He studied her face as if trying to decide how hard he had to push. You have worked hard to get where you are, he said finally. Director title your seat at the table. Everyone knows you keep the place clean. No scandals, no messy appeals, solid record. He lifted his hand from the report. His fingers left a faint crease. Now imagine the board hearing that you signed off on a flawed termination, that you did not catch basic errors before putting your name on the line, that you are digging into it after the fact because you got cold feet. That is not what this is, she said. He gave a short, breathy laugh. It does not matter what it is, he said. What matters is how it looks. You start questioning this, you are not just questioning me. You are questioning your own judgment, your own processes. People might start asking why we should trust your department at all. He picked up his mug, took another sip, then added almost lightly, and if anyone notices how invested you suddenly are in one hourly floor tech, they might wonder about that too. The implication hung between them like smoke. Madison felt a pulse of heat under the cool of her skin. Anger, embarrassment, something else. I am invested in the process being fair, she said. Then I guess we just see different things when we look at the same piece of paper, Trent replied. He picked up the report, slid it back into the folder, and closed it gently. You have a department to run, he said. I have a plant floor to manage. Let us not make each other's lives harder than they have to be. He handed her the folder, his fingers brushing hers. His hand was warm. Hers felt ice cold. She took it and stepped back. The break room noise rushed in again as if someone had turned up the volume. Microwave doors, chairs, scraping the television, flicking to a new map. Thanks for the chat, Trent added, already turning toward the coffee machine. She walked out before she said something she could not file under professional. In the hallway, the air felt thin. The folder pressed against her ribs and under her palm. Her shoes were too loud on the tile. The camera at the end of the corridor blinked its small red light at her. She thought of Ethan's face in the market of his daughter laughing with whipped cream on her nose. She thought of her own signature in black ink, strong and unreadable at the bottom of a page that might not be what it claimed. Her hand tightened on the cardboard until her knuckles hurt. She kept walking. The rest of the day moved in fragments. Meetings, emails, a quick check-in with payroll about year-end processing, faces passing her doorway, voices at the edge of hearing. The folder with Ethan Ward's name on it stayed on the corner of Madison's desk, like a weight that refused to roll away. Every time she glanced up from her screen, it was there, a strip of manila in the edge of her vision. By the time the winter sky outside her window had turned from blue to a deep grainy charcoal, most of the offices along the HR corridor were dark. Coats had been pulled from the backs of chairs. Computers had gone to sleep. Someone had left a half-eaten cookie near the copier. Madison shut down her computer and reached for her coat. Her hand paused, then drifted instead to the folder. She flipped it open to the first page of Ethan's original hiring packet. Name, birth date, emergency contact, prior work history. Near the top, under address, a line of black letters. Ashbury Court Apartments, Unit 3B. She had seen that address before. It had been just another line in a data entry screen at the time. Now she saw something else in it. A place where the consequences of her signature lived not in theory, but in chipped paint and unpaid bills. She closed the folder and slid it into her bag. Outside, the wind had picked up. It stung the exposed skin between her gloves and her sleeves as she crossed the lot. Her breath puffed white as she unlocked her car. In her neighborhood closer to the river, the sidewalks were already cleared. Streetlights burned steady in neat rows. Coffee shops glowed with soft light and chalkboard signs. She knew the route there well. She did not turn that way. The GPS on her dashboard plotted the path to Ashbury Court. She followed its instructions through streets that grew narrower and more patched as she drove. Snow piled higher against the curbs here. The tire ruts were deeper, the ice beneath the snow more polished and treacherous. Ashbury Court turned out to be a 3-story brick building with iron railings and a narrow front stoop. The kind of place that had probably been considered modern 20 years ago and had not been updated much since. A single string of multicolored lights sagged above the main entrance, one bulb out in the center. She parked across the street. The engine ticked softly when she turned it off. Inside the car, with the fan still blowing residual heat, the world felt muted. The snow muffled the usual sounds of traffic. A bus roared past, then faded into distance. The apartment numbers were painted on the mailboxes just inside the glass front door. From where she sat, she could make out a dim reflection of them. She found the window that must belong to Unit 3B by counting. 1, 2, 3 from the left second floor. The curtains there were open halfway. Warm light spilled out onto the snow of the narrow balcony. In the corner of the room stood a small artificial tree on a wooden crate. Its branches were thin, but someone had taken time to cover it with paper snowflakes and strings of popcorn. Madison leaned forward, one hand resting on the top of the steering wheel. A small figure darted into view. Lily. She wore flannel pajamas with penguins on them and mismatched socks, one red, one striped. She stood on the crate to reach the higher branches, tongue sticking out a little as she concentrated on hanging something. Ethan stepped into the frame behind her, hands ready at her sides in case she slipped. He said something. Madison could not hear the words through the glass and distance, but she saw the shape of his mouth and the way Lily threw her head back in laughter. He lifted her easily off the crate when she was finished and spun her once. Her arms flew wide, then wrapped around his neck. He rested his chin on the top of her head for a moment, eyes closing briefly. They moved out of view. For a few minutes, the window showed only the tree, its paper ornaments swaying slightly when someone passed too close. Madison sat back in the driver's seat. Her own apartment was on the other side of town, on the 12th floor of a building with underground parking and a lobby scented with eucalyptus. She had chosen the furniture by scrolling through a catalog. Gray sofa, glass coffee table, 2 matching lamps, a framed abstract print above the couch because the salesperson had said the wall would look empty without it. There was a plant in the corner that her neighbor watered when she traveled. It was alive. Technically. She had a tree too. Artificial perfect, delivered in a box and assembled in under an hour. The ornaments came in a coordinated set. Metallic spheres all the same size. From the outside, her windows would glow the same soft yellow as the others on her floor. No one watching from a car would know if anyone inside was lonely. On the second floor of Ashbury Court, the light in Ethan's window shifted. He came back into sight with Lily in his arms, her head heavy against his shoulder. He swayed a little where he stood, a slow side-to-side motion that looked like habit more than thought. He said something into her hair. She nodded, eyes half closed, one hand still clutching what looked like a small paper bag, probably the one that had held the key from the market. He disappeared from view again, carrying her down the short hallway that led to the bedrooms. Madison stayed where she was until the light in the living room dimmed. The tree remained on a small island of color behind the glass. Eventually, the heater in her car began to blow cooler air. Her toes started to sting in her boots. She started the engine again and pulled away the tires crunching over frozen slush. In the rearview mirror, the brick building grew smaller, then vanished behind a row of bare trees. Her own building felt even emptier that night. The elevator ride up was silent. The hallway smelled faintly of someone else's dinner. Inside her apartment, the clock on the microwave ticked over to 8:15. She did not turn on the television. She set her bag on the counter, poured a glass of water, and stood at the window, instead looking at the city lights. From this height, everything below looked small and neat. Streets, headlights, the pinprick red of a distant radio tower. Her reflection in the glass looked tired. The burgundy scarf still at her throat made a dark slash across the pale of her coat. She thought of Trent's hand pressing down on the report in the break room. She thought of Ethan's hand steadying Lily on the crate. Her eyes dropped to the city map in her mind, tracing not the clean lines of the riverfront, but the side streets where buildings like Ashbury Court stood in rows. On her kitchen counter under the water glass, the corner of the folder with Ethan's name peered out of her bag. The next day she did not go in early. There was no need to repeat the file room. The numbers there would not change overnight. She arrived at her usual time, nodded at the guard, sat through a departmental check, and answered 3 emails about vacation rollovers. At lunch, instead of warming the soup she had brought from home, she opened her browser and searched the address for Ashbury Court again. A few blocks away, according to the map, was a small brick building marked as Riverside Community Center. She clicked on the website. The homepage was simple: a blurry photo of volunteers at a table, a list of programs, evening classes, free tax prep, and spring food shelf hours. Her eye snagged on a photo halfway down the page. It was small and dated, but she recognized the layout of the gymnasium. Folding tables, boxes of canned goods, a handwritten sign that said Holiday Food Drive, last year in bright marker. The caption under the image read, "Volunteers from all over the neighborhood help us sort and pack." She imagined Ethan in that room, sleeves pushed up, putting order into chaos with the same practicality she had seen at the loading dock. She closed the browser without bookmarking the page. At 4:30, when the sky outside her office was already going from gray to ink, she logged out of the HR system, shrugged on her coat, and picked up her bag. She told herself she was going home. She did not tell herself anything when she turned at the light instead of going straight and followed the directions that led her back toward the river, then a little north. The Riverside Community Center sat on a corner lot, low and square, with a mural of children holding hands across one side. Warm light spilled from the tall windows of the gym. Cars were parked haphazardly along the curb. People moved in and out through a glass door, shoulders hunched against the cold arms loaded with boxes. She parked half a block away and walked up. Inside, the air hit her in a wave of smells and sounds. Tomato soup from a crock pot set up near the entrance. Cardboard. Coffee in a metal urn. Cloth and wool and wet boots. Voices overlapped in the high-ceilinged space, softened by the acoustics of the basketball court. Rows of folding tables formed makeshift assembly lines down the middle of the gym. At one, 2 teenagers stacked canned vegetables into neat pyramids. At another, an older woman wrote labels in careful script on tape and handed strips to a younger man who affixed them to boxes. Near the far wall, at a table piled with boxed pasta and jars of sauce, Ethan was working. He wore a faded t-shirt with some sports logo, partially visible under an open hoodie. His hands moved quickly, picking items from one pile, placing them with precision in boxes in front of him. A man beside him taped each full box shut and slid it down to the end of the table where someone else loaded it onto a dolly. For a moment, Madison just watched. There was nothing dramatic in the way he moved, no sign that this task was anything more than a straightforward job that needed doing. Yet, there was a kind of care in the way he arranged the items, making sure the jars were upright, the boxes flat, the weight balanced. She recognized that care. She had seen it in maintenance reports where his name appeared. Quick resolution, preventive checks done without being asked. She stepped closer, weaving between tables and volunteers. "Ethan," she said. His shoulders stiffened before he turned. His eyes moved from the box in front of him to her face. The shift was slow, like he had to tell himself that yes, she was actually there. He straightened the roll of tape beside his colleague, going silent as the man saw the change and stepped back. "Ms. Reyes," Ethan said. His tone made the title sharper than it had sounded in her office. "I did not expect to see you here," he added. "I was in the neighborhood," she said. It sounded thin even to her own ears. "I saw the sign about the food drive." He nodded once. His expression did not soften. "Looks like you have all the help you need," he said. She glanced along the rows of tables. There were plenty of people, but the work was still heavy. the boxes still stacked 3 high against the wall. "I wanted to talk to you," she said. His jaw moved slightly, as if he was grinding his teeth. "About what?" he asked. She was close enough now to see the tiredness around his eyes. It was there beneath the guarded look, the kind of tiredness that did not come just from lifting boxes. "About your file?" she said quietly. "About the incident report. I went back through it. There are things that do not add up. Formatting changes, edits right before it crossed my desk, witnesses who do not match the schedule." He watched her while she spoke, his face unreadable. "I spoke to one of the people listed," she continued. "He did not know his name was on any statement. I have concerns about the integrity of the documentation." "Concerns," Ethan repeated. "It means I believe there may have been misconduct," she said. "By your supervisor." "You said that before," he asked. "In your office." "No," she admitted. He let out a breath that was almost a laugh, except there was no humor in it. "What changed?" he asked. "I saw the revision history in the system," she said, "and I realized I had not asked enough questions when the report came through. That is on me." "You signed it," he said. "I know," she answered. The sounds of the gym went on around them, tape ripping, boxes sliding, a child somewhere near the entrance laughing at something. "I am starting a formal review," she said. "I have the authority to request logs to interview witnesses. It may take some time, but if the report was falsified, that needs to be corrected." He studied her for a few seconds. "And in the meantime," he asked, "what do I tell my landlord when the rent is due before your process finishes correcting itself?" She reached into her bag and pulled out her wallet. The movement was instinctive. There was no plan in it, just the urge to put something tangible between her guilt and his reality. "I can help bridge that gap," she said. "As a loan, personal, not from the company. I know it's not much, but it might give you and your daughter some space while this is sorted out." She held the wallet low, partly hidden by the edge of the table. Ethan's gaze dropped to it, then back up to her face. Something tightened in his posture. His shoulders pulled back as if he had been pushed. "I do not want your money," he said. His voice was calm, but there was steel under it. "This is not about charity," she said quickly. "It is about fairness. You should not have to carry the immediate cost of a decision that may be based on altered information." "It is exactly about charity," he said. "You feel bad, so you want to smooth it over with some bills from your wallet." She flinched. "That is not what I am trying to do," she said. He shook his head. "You go back to your office, you fix the system that let this happen if you can," he said. "You want to help do that. Make it so they cannot do this to the next guy who annoys his boss." He reached for another box of pasta and set it in the open carton in front of him, his movements sharp but controlled. "But do not hand me cash like that makes us even," he added. "That is for you, not for me." She closed her wallet slowly and slid it back into her bag. "I am not looking for even," she said. "Good," he replied, "because you are not going to find it in a 20. The man with the tape stepped closer again, sensing that his place at the table was needed. Ethan picked up a jar of sauce and placed it beside the pasta. His attention shifted back to the line. "You have a daughter," Madison said the words out before she could stop them. "This time of year is hard enough without this." He paused only for a heartbeat. "I have had hard years before," he said. "We got through them. We will get through this." He looked at her again directly. "But I am not taking your money." She nodded. Her throat felt tight. "If you really want to do something," he said, "make sure the next guy does not get a piece of paper that lies about him without anyone checking." He set the last jar in the box and closed the flaps with a firm push. "Now, if you will excuse me," he said, "these boxes are not going to pack themselves." There was no anger in the words, no raised voice, just a simple fact. She stepped back from the table. "Thank you for talking to me," she said. He did not answer. The tape gun shrieked as the man beside him sealed the box. Madison turned and walked toward the exit. Outside, the cold hit her lungs in a rush. She crossed the parking lot with her head down, boots crunching on the thin layer of ice. Her breath clouded the air in front of her. In the driver's seat of her car, she sat for a moment with her hands on the steering wheel, the engine idling. Through the windshield, she could see the square of light from the gym window. Figures moved inside like shadows on a screen. She thought of the report on her desk, of the camera logs she had not yet pulled, of Trent's hand on the paper, of Ethan's hands on the boxes, of Lily's fingers wrapped around a metal key. Her car's heater blew warm air against her cheeks, but she still felt something cold settled low in her chest. She put the car in gear and pulled away from the curb. The community center shrinking in the rearview mirror, the glow of its windows, a small, stubborn square against the winter dark. The parking lot at Riverside Community Center was darker when Madison came out. The gym lights still glowed behind frosted glass, but the street lamps here were fewer, their cones of yellow barely reaching the edges of the cracked asphalt. She unlocked her car and slipped inside. The steering wheel was cold through her gloves. She sat for a second with the engine off, watching her breath cloud the air. A small rap sounded on the passenger side window. Madison jumped, hand flying to her chest. She turned. A face peered in at her from the next car over inches from the glass. Big brown eyes, pink hat with a pom-pom nose, pressed so close her breath fogged a circle on the window. It took Madison half a heartbeat to recognize Lily. The passenger window of Ethan's sedan was halfway down. Inside, Lily was kneeling on the seat, a book open on her lap. Madison hit the switch on her own door, lowering the window partway. "Hi," Lily said. Her voice tumbled out in a rush as if she had been holding it ready. "You are the lady from Dad's work." Madison blinked. The air between the two cars was sharp with cold. "Hello, Lily," she said slowly. "I remember you from the company picnic." "You had sunglasses and a clipboard," Lily said. "Dad said you were important." Madison felt a strange twist at that choice of words. "Your dad gives me too much credit," she said. From the driver's side of the sedan, Ethan leaned across and reaching for the window controls. "Lily, sweetheart, sit back," he said. "It is cold. We need to get home." Lily ignored the switch and the hint. "Are you coming to our house?" she asked Madison, as if the question were as obvious as asking about the weather. Madison blinked again. "I was not planning to," she said. "You should," Lily said. "Dad makes spaghetti on Wednesdays. He makes too much. He always makes too much. There will be extra." "Lily," Ethan said more firmly this time, "close your window." He met Madison's eyes past his daughter. His expression was a mix of apology and something tighter. Madison hesitated. The reasonable response sat ready on her tongue. It would be simple. A polite no, a quick explanation about work and schedules and how she did not want to intrude. Lily pushed her hat back a little, revealing messy bangs. "Please," she said, "we never have company on spaghetti night. It is boring." Madison heard the words Ethan had thrown at her inside the gym. "Fix the system. Do not try to make things even with cash." He had not said anything about dinner. She looked at him again. He gave a small, resigned shrug that did not quite reach his shoulders. "If you are busy, that is fine," he said. "She will survive with just me and cartoons." Madison thought of her empty apartment, her one-pan meals eaten over emails, the way her television filled the silence with noise but not company. "I am not busy," she heard herself say. Lily beamed. "See," she told her father. "I knew she was not busy." Madison almost smiled at that logic. "I just need to stop by my place for a minute," she added. "I will follow you after that, if the invitation still stands." Ethan looked at his daughter. Lily nodded so hard her pom-pom bounced. "It stands," he said. He gave Madison his address again even though she did not need it. She had already memorized it from the file. Back at her building, she went upstairs only long enough to drop her bag and grab the one thing she thought made sense to bring. A paper bag with a loaf of bread from the small bakery near her lobby. It felt like a token, not a solution, but at least she was not arriving empty-handed. The drive back across town felt shorter this time. The route was familiar now. The turn slid one into the next without the GPS's prompts. Ashbury Court's stairwell smelled faintly of old paint and someone's recent frying oil. The walls were scuffed in places where furniture had bumped on the way up. On the third floor, a strip of peeling tinsel hung crookedly above the hallway light. Unit 3B had a construction paper wreath taped to the door. Lily's handwriting looped unevenly across the green ring. The wards. Madison knocked. She heard quick footsteps on the other side, then the soft thud of a chain sliding back. The door opened to Lily barefoot, still in penguin pajamas, now topped with a too large sweatshirt that probably belonged to Ethan. "You brought something," Lily said, spotting the bag. "Is it cookies?" "Sorry," Madison said. "Just bread." "That is okay," Lily decided. "Bread is good with spaghetti." She stepped aside, sweeping an arm in an exaggerated gesture. "Welcome to our house," she announced. The warmth hit Madison as she stepped inside. Not just from the air, which was a little cooler than her own apartment, but from the layers of life in the small space. The living room and kitchen shared one open area. A faded sofa faced a television on a low stand stacked with DVDs and game controllers. Crayons and paper covered the coffee table, a few rolling to the edge when the door closed. The small tree in the corner glowed with colored lights, its branches full of paper snowflakes, pipe cleaner, stirs, and crayons, drawings cut into ornament shapes. Near the middle, hanging a little lower than the rest, the metal key from the market caught the light. "I am in here," Ethan called from the kitchen area. He stood at the stove, wooden spoon in one hand, steam rising from a pot of boiling pasta. Another pot on the back burner held a red sauce that smelled of tomato, garlic, and dried herbs. He had changed into a clean t-shirt and jeans. His hair was still damp, as if he had showered quickly after leaving the community center. Madison held up the bag. "I brought bread," she said. "You did not have to do that," he answered. "I know," she said. "I wanted to." He nodded once. Lily darted to the counter, peering into the pot. "Is it almost ready?" she asked. 10 minutes, he said. "Can you set the table?" "Yes, I will show Madison the plates." Lily grabbed Madison's hand and tugged her toward a small cabinet. Inside was a mismatched collection of dishes. 2 chipped white plates, one with a blue rim, one plain. A floral one that had probably come from a thrift store. A plastic one with cartoon characters. "We use the nice ones when we have company," Lily explained, choosing the blue rim and the floral, then hesitating over the third. Madison smiled. "I can use the chipped one," she said. "I promise I will not tell anyone." "Okay," Lily said, satisfied. They set 3 places at the small table pushed against the wall. The tablecloth was a plain cotton one, but Lily had drawn snowflakes on paper and taped them along the edge. "Do you like Christmas movies?" Lily asked as she lined up forks. "We are watching one after dinner. Dad says he saw it when he was little. It is very old." "They were not that old when I saw them," Ethan said from the stove. "They are in black and white," Lily said in a stage whisper. Madison laughed softly. "I like Christmas movies," she said. "Good," Lily said. "You can sit in the middle. Dad sprawls." "I do not sprawl," Ethan said. "You do," Lily said. "You forget where your feet are." He shook his head but did not argue further. He drained the pasta in a colander, the rush of steam fogging the nearby cabinet door. His hands moved easily without wasted motion. Into bowls onto the table, a sprinkle of extra dried herbs from a jar. Madison took her seat where Lily indicated. The chair creaked slightly under her. She placed a napkin on her lap. Lily climbed onto her chair legs, swinging. Ethan sat opposite Madison, the table suddenly feeling smaller with 3 people around it. They ate. The sauce was simple but good, bright, with tomato and just enough garlic. The bread from the bakery soaked it up easily. Lily slurped noodles with noisy enthusiasm, getting a bit of sauce on her chin. Ethan reached automatically for a napkin, catching the mess before it dripped. "So," Lily said between bites, "what do you do at Dad's work when you are not signing papers?" Madison swallowed her mouthful carefully. "I manage people things," she said. "Hiring, training, making sure the rules are followed, making sure people are treated fairly." The last phrase came out more deliberate than she intended. "Like a teacher," Lily said. "A bit," Madison agreed. "Except my students are grown-ups and they do not listen any better." Lily giggled. "Does Dad listen?" she asked. Ethan made a low sound. "Sometimes," Madison said. "Not always." "Hey," he protested. "It is true," she said lightly. He looked at her, surprised by the joke, then let out a breath that was almost something like a laugh. Lily pointed her fork at him. "Dad is good at fixing things," she told Madison. "He fixed Mrs. Halpern's heater last week, and he fixed Mr. Lee's sink, and he fixed the car twice." 3 times, Ethan said. "The alternator does not count as my fault." 3, Lily corrected herself. "He can fix anything." A tiny flush rose in Ethan's cheeks. "He just wants to open his own place one day," Lily went on, unaware of the change in his expression, "where people bring their cars and he fixes them and I can draw on the walls." She said it with such certainty that for a moment the image almost felt real in the room with them. A small garage walls covered in Lily's crayons tools neatly hung Ethan's hands clean only until the first hood opened. Madison glanced at him. He looked down at his plate, jaw tight. "We talk about a lot of things," he said quietly. "But you said someday," Lily insisted. "Someday can mean a lot of things," he replied. Madison cleared her throat. "It is a good dream," she said. Lily nodded, satisfied. "It is the best," she said. "Better than a castle." They finished the meal. Lily ate 2 slices of bread and declared herself full. Ethan collected plates, stacking them carefully. "Can we start the movie?" Lily asked. 1 hour, he said. "We need to clean up first." She made a face but slid off her chair. "I will go pick," she said. "So it is ready." She disappeared into the living room, rifling through the stack of DVDs. Ethan carried the plates to the sink. Madison stood, picked up the empty bowl, and followed. "You do not have to help with this," he said. "I know," she answered. "I am going to anyway." He ran hot water, filling the sink with suds. The faucet clanked faintly when he turned it. She rolled up her sleeves, revealing the pale skin of her forearms in the warm kitchen light. He handed her a dishcloth. "Wash or dry?" he asked. "I will wash," she said. "You dry." Their hands brushed as he passed a plate to her. His fingers were rough knuckles marked with small white scars from old nicks. They fell into a rhythm: plate, bowl, fork, soap, rinse, towel. For a few moments, the only sounds were water, ceramic, and the faint murmur of Lily talking to herself as she debated between movies. Madison broke the quiet first. "I am sorry," she said. He did not look up. "You said that already," he said. "I know," she replied. "I am saying it again anyway." He set the plate he was drying on the rack. "Words are easy," he said. "You sign a piece of paper, you say a few things in a meeting, and somebody's life shifts. Then you say you are sorry. The paper still stands." She rinsed a glass, watching the water slide down the inside. "I am not proud of how fast I signed that one," she said. "I should have slowed down. I should have questioned more. I did not. I let the template speak louder than my own judgment." He glanced at her now, just for a second. "You think you can unsign it?" he asked. "No," she said. "I cannot pretend it did not happen, but I can challenge what it was built on." She set the glass in the drying rack more forcefully than she meant to. "I pulled the revision history for the report," she went on. "I compared versions. I talked to one of the listed witnesses. I am going to talk to the others. I am going to request security footage from the dates mentioned." She ticked each item off in her mind as she spoke, not as a performance, but as a list she owed him. "If there is falsification," she said, "I will present that to the executive team. I will recommend corrective action." "You really think they are going to line up to admit they got it wrong?" he asked. "No," she said. "I think they will not want a fraudulent incident report on record if there is proof it was altered. That is a legal liability, even for a floor tech." He gave a small, reluctant huff. "You make it sound so personal and so impersonal at the same time," he said. "That is my job," she answered, "to translate people into systems and systems back into people. I failed at that the first time with you. I am trying not to fail the second." He wiped his hands on the towel and leaned against the counter watching her. "And if you dig into all this," he said, "and it sticks to you instead of to Trent, what then?" "Then I will know I did what was right," she said. It surprised her how clear that felt once she said it out loud. "For you?" he asked. "For me," she said. "For my department, for the other people whose names end up in folders in that cabinet without anyone looking twice." He studied her face, searching for something. Lily appeared in the doorway holding up a DVD case. "Can we watch the one with the angel and the man who thinks his life is small?" she asked. Ethan smiled faintly. "That is a good one," he said. He looked at Madison again. "You are sure you want to spend your night off watching that with us?" he asked. She thought of the elevator ride back at her building, of the hum of her refrigerator, in the quiet kitchen, of the blue light of her laptop on the couch. "I am sure," she said. He nodded slowly. "Then stay," he said, "at least until the end of the movie." Lily whooped and ran back to the television. They finished the dishes together. Madison dried her hands on a clean towel, feeling the softness of the worn cotton. Ethan turned off the kitchen light, leaving the living room lamps and the tree as the main source of glow. They took their places on the sofa, Lily in the middle, just as she had decreed, one shoulder leaning into her father, the other into Madison. The movie started, black and white images flickering on the screen, the soft crackle of the old soundtrack filling the room. For the first time in days, Madison did not think about her inbox or her calendar when she sat down. Her mind stayed with the people on either side of her, the warmth of their shoulders, the faint scent of tomato sauce and crayons in the air. On the tree in the corner, the metal key caught the light again, hanging at the edge of the branch, waiting. The movie had ended with the room washed in the gray glow of the closing credits. Lily had fallen asleep before the last scene, her head on Madison's shoulder, her hand curled in the fabric of Madison's sleeve. Ethan had carried her to bed without turning on any bright lights, moving through the apartment as if it were a well-rehearsed path. On the drive home, the city lights had looked different to Madison, less like decoration, more like tiny signals in a dark grid, places where people lived and worked and tried. In the morning, the office lights went back to their usual hum, but something in her did not. By 9, her inbox had stacked up. Holiday scheduling, end-of-year reviews, a reminder from legal about updated harassment training, the ordinary demands of the role pressed in around the one task she had decided would not get pushed to the bottom of the list. She opened Ethan's incident report again. 3 witnesses were listed beneath the summary: G. Dalton Shipping, R. Chen Assembly, M. Alvarez Warehouse. She wrote all 3 names on a sticky note in square, neat letters and pressed it just below the monitor. The first, Gary Dalton, worked in shipping on the day shift. Madison checked the roster, found his lunch break, and timed her approach. The shipping bay was loud, the echo of pallet jacks and the beeping of forklifts bouncing off concrete walls. The smell of cardboard and diesel fuel hung in the air. Gary was leaning against a stack of flattened boxes, a sandwich in one hand, his phone in the other. He was in his 50s, with a close-cropped beard and the kind of shoulders that came from a lifetime of lifting. "Mr. Dalton," Madison called over the noise. He looked up, eyebrows rising when he saw who had addressed him. He wiped his hand on his pants before offering it, suddenly conscious of the mayonnaise on his fingers. "Ma'am," he said, "everything all right?" "Can I borrow a few minutes?" she asked. "Inside where we can hear each other." He glanced at his sandwich, then nodded. "Sure," he said. "Let me wrap this up." In a small side office off the shipping floor, the noise dropped to a muffled rumble. They sat at a metal table with a clipboard and a jar of pens in the center. A calendar with a picture of a lake hung crooked on the wall. "I wanted to ask you about an incident report you were listed on," Madison said. His brow furrowed. "Something I did?" he asked. "No," she said. "This involves another employee, Ethan Wardy B. Balmustc. Ethan Ward." Recognition flickered in his expression. "Yeah, I know Ward," he said. "Good with his hands. Fixed my pallet jack once when maintenance was backed up." "You are listed as a witness on a report involving him and a safety concern," she said. "Do you remember being interviewed about that? Filling out a statement?" He sat back thinking. His gaze drifted up to the ceiling, as if the answer might be written there next to the water stain near the sprinkler head. "No," he said slowly. "I do not remember anyone asking me to write anything about Ward." "What was the date?" She told him. He scratched his jaw. "I was on Dock 3 that week," he said. "We had a carrier miss a slot. I remember that. I do not remember any drama with Ward. If there had been shouting, I would have noticed." "You are certain no one asked you to sign a statement?" she pressed. He shook his head. "No, ma'am," he said. "Only thing I sign is bills of lading and that form for the safety award 3 years ago. And I would remember that it came with a $50 gift card." Madison gave a small nod, making a note in the pad she had brought, even though she knew she would not forget. "Thank you," she said. "If you do remember anything else, would you let me know?" "Sure," he said. "Is Ward in trouble?" She chose her words carefully. "That is what I am trying to figure out," she said. The second name, Ryan Chen, worked on the assembly line in a different wing of the building. The floor there smelled of oil and machine coolant. The lines clanked and hummed, metal arms moving in precise, repetitive arcs. She caught Ryan in the break area during the 10-minute pause between runs. He was young, mid-20s at most, with a baseball cap turned backward and a tattoo curling up the side of his neck, just under his collar. "Hi," she said. "Ryan, right?" "Yeah," he said. He looked wary. "Did I do something?" "I wanted to ask about a report that lists you as a witness," she said, "regarding an incident involving Ethan Ward." He frowned. "That guy from maintenance?" he asked. "Yes," she said. He shrugged. "He came by sometimes when the line jammed," Ryan said. "Quiet guy. Fixed stuff. Was something wrong?" "You are listed as witnessing aggressive behavior toward a coworker," she said. He blinked. "I am what?" he asked. "Your name is on the report as a witness," she said. "Did anyone from management ask you to write a statement? Or did you tell anyone you saw anything like that?" He pulled off his cap and ran a hand through his hair, then replaced it, buying time. "I do not remember that," he said. "I mean, there is people raising their voices sometimes. Stuff gets stressful. But I do not remember Ward yelling, not the way some guys do." He shifted in his chair. "Listen," he added. "Trent asked me once if Ward ever mouthed off. I said everybody mouths off sometimes. He wrote something on a clipboard. That is it." "Did you sign anything?" she asked. "No," he said. "Should I have?" She shook her head. "Thank you," she said. "That is all I needed to know." By mid-afternoon, 2 of the 3 witnesses named in the file had confirmed what she already suspected. Their presence on the report had been convenient, not accurate. The third, Maria Alvarez, worked in the warehouse section, a warren of high shelves and narrow aisles. It took Madison a few minutes to locate her, directed by a supervisor who pointed her toward aisle 12. Maria stood on a step stool, scanning barcodes with a handheld device. She was small, with dark hair pulled into a tight bun, and wore a faded sweatshirt with the name of a local community college across the front. "Maria," Madison called. Maria startled, nearly dropping the scanner. She caught it with both hands, heart visibly racing. "Yes," she said. "Sorry, I did not see you." "It is all right," Madison said. "Do you have a moment?" Maria hesitated, glancing down the aisle. "Senam at Bustendi." "I can clock out for my break," she said. "We are kind of behind." I will not keep you long, Madison said. They moved to a quieter spot near the end of the aisle between pallets stacked with shrink-wrapped boxes. The air here felt cooler, the concrete floor sending a chill up through Madison's shoes. I wanted to ask you about a statement on an incident report, Madison said. You are listed as a witness to an event involving Ethan Ward. Maria's shoulders rose slightly. Oh, she said. The word came out flat and careful. Do you remember writing a statement about that? Madison asked. Maria did not answer right away. Her fingers tightened around the scanner. Ms. Reyes, she said, am I in trouble? No, Madison said, keeping her voice even. You are not in trouble. I just need to understand how your name came to be on that report. Maria swallowed. Trent talked to me, she said finally. He said there was an issue with someone on the floor. He said he needed people to back up what happened. Did you see anything yourself? Madison asked. Maria shook her head. I saw them arguing once, she said, but not what he wrote, not like that. Did you tell him that? Madison asked. I said I did not really know, Maria replied. He said he just needed me to sign something to say I had seen Ward being difficult before, that it would help clean up a situation that was already bad. Madison felt her jaw tighten. Did you read what you signed? She asked. He said he was in a hurry, Maria said. Her eyes were shiny now, fixed on a spot just over Madison's shoulder. He said if I did not sign, it would look like I was not a team player, like I did not support management. I need this job. My mom is sick. I did not want any problems. Her voice trembled on the last word. Madison lowered her own voice. I understand that you felt pressure, she said. You are not the person I am concerned about here. Maria let out a breath that shook. Is Ward okay? She asked. I felt bad after, but he was already gone. I thought it was too late. It might not be, Madison said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small notepad, writing a brief line. I may need you to speak to someone from our legal team, she said, only if you feel safe doing that. If there was pressure put on you to sign a false statement that is important. Maria looked alarmed. I do not want to get dragged into anything, she said quickly. I cannot lose my job. You will not lose your job for telling the truth, Madison replied. She said it clearly, even as a tiny voice in the back of her mind asked who had guaranteed that for Ethan. I will not put your name out there without your consent, she added. If I move forward, I will do it in a way that protects you as much as possible. Maria nodded slowly. I did not like signing it, she said. It felt wrong, but I also did not want him watching me. He watches people. Madison knew who she meant. Thank you for being honest with me, she said. When she left the warehouse, the daylight outside the high windows had thinned to a faint blue. The overhead lamps cast long shadows along the floor. Her own shadow stretched ahead of her elongated legs, moving in time with her steps. Back in her office, she closed the door and leaned against it for a moment. On her desk, the folder waited along with the notes she had taken. Her handwriting, usually precise, looked sharper than usual, the lines of each letter pressed deeper into the paper. She sat and opened a new document on her computer. Not an email yet, just a blank page where she began to shape what she knew. Witness names, conflicting schedules, statements obtained under pressure, revision history logs, Trent's edits. She listed facts, not feelings, dates, times, systems. The words began to form a pattern, not complete but enough to see the outline of something that would be hard to ignore if laid in front of the right eyes. By the time she shut down her computer, the building had emptied. The quiet of after hours settled back in. The only light in the HR corridor came from the exit signs and the small rectangles spilling from a few offices where late workers lingered. She shrugged into her coat, slipped the folder into her bag again, and turned off the lamp on her desk. In the parking garage, her footsteps echoed on the concrete. The air was colder here than outside, the kind that seeped through wool and settled in bone. Her car sat in its usual spot near a concrete pillar painted with a yellow stripe at waist level. She clicked the remote. The headlights blinked in response. She took the last few steps, digging in her bag for her keys. Working late, Madison. The voice came from her left. She turned. Trent stepped out from behind the pillar hands in the pockets of his dark coat. The fluorescent strips above cast thin lines of light across his face, leaving the rest in shadow. Her fingers closed around the key's metal edges, biting into her palm. Apparently so, she said. He glanced at her bag. Big day for HR? He asked. We all have year-end deadlines, she said. He took a few steps closer. The rubber soles of his shoes squeaked faintly on the smooth floor. I heard you have been asking questions, he said, checking in with folks. Dalton, Chen, Alvarez. His tone was conversational. The words were not. It is my job to verify documentation, she said. Is that what you call it? He asked. I call it stirring up dust that had already settled. She held his gaze. If the dust is covering something that should not be covered, she said, then yes, I am stirring it. He smiled. The expression did not reach his eyes. You know what people are saying? He asked. That you have taken a special interest in Ward, showing up at places he goes, digging through his file like it is the only one that matters. Her heartbeat picked up. She kept her face still. I am treating this the way I would treat any serious concern about the integrity of our records, she said. Sure, he said. That is one way to see it. He shifted his weight. Another way, he continued, is that you let a bad call happen and now you are overcompensating, or that you are getting personally involved with an ex-employee in a way that might not look so great on you. The fluorescent light hummed above them. Somewhere deeper in the garage, a car door slammed, then silence. You are implying something, she said. If you have an accusation, be clear. I am implying nothing, he said with a shrug. I am just pointing out that perception matters. People see the HR director chasing after a fired floor tech, spending late nights on his case. They start to wonder what else is going on. He took one more step forward, just inside the edge of what felt comfortable. You start poking too hard at that report, he said. You risk more than my reputation. You risk the department, your own standing. The board likes clean lines. They like decisions that stay made. You start dragging them back through this, somebody's going to ask why you signed in the first place. She did not move. I will answer that, she said. I will say I trusted a supervisor who lied. His jaw ticked. Big word, he said. Lied. If the evidence supports it, it is the correct word, she replied. He held her eyes for a long moment. The air between them felt tight. You want a word from me? He said at last. Here is one. Careful. He let the syllables hang there. If you get so tangled up defending Ward that you trip over your own position, he added, I will not be the one to pull you back up. He stepped away, then turning toward the stairwell. His footsteps echoed as he walked, then faded. Madison stayed where she was until the sound disappeared completely. Her hand ached where she had gripped the keys. The overhead light flickered once, then steadied. She unlocked her car and slid inside, closing the door firmly. In the enclosed space, her own breathing sounded loud. For a moment, she rested her forehead against the steering wheel, eyes closed. The image of the file, the faces of the witnesses, the sound of Trent's voice all crowded in at once. She sat up, started the engine, and backed slowly out of the space. The garage swallowed her taillights as she drove up the ramp toward the thin strip of night filled with streetlights and snow. She did not go straight home. At the top of the ramp, the garage spit her out into the open, and the city closed around her again, a loose net of light and moving shadow. Snow fell in thin, slanting lines across the beams of her headlights. The wipers scraped a steady, tired rhythm. She drove 2 blocks toward the river, hands tight on the wheel. At the intersection, the light turned red. The glow soaked into the snow piled on the curb, staining it a dull pink. She could see her route home in her mind, left at the next light past the coffee shop, with the fogged windows over the bridge where the water steamed faintly in the cold. Instead, when the light turned green, she sat for one breath longer than she should have, then flicked the turn signal the other way. The North River building rose ahead of her, familiar and impersonal, a block of glass and metal, with its logo lit in white near the top. Most of the windows were dark. A few rectangles on the higher floors glowed with lonely lamplight. She pulled into the visitor lot this time. Her regular spot in the garage felt too close to the conversation she had just had. The cold bit at her cheeks when she stepped out. The air tasted like metal. Inside the lobby was mostly empty. The security guard behind the desk glanced up from his newspaper, his eyes widening when he saw her. Back again, Ms. Reyes? He asked. I forgot something in my office, she said. It was not completely true. She had forgotten a lot of things in that office. Questions, steps she should have taken before signing a name. Burning the midnight oil, he added. So they tell me, she said. He buzzed her through. The elevator ride up was silent except for the thin mechanical whine as it climbed. On the HR floor, the lights in the hallway were already off. The emergency bulbs cast a soft red glow along the baseboards. She flipped the switch by the stairwell. Fluorescent tubes flickered on one by one, humming as they warmed. Her office smelled faintly of coffee gone stale and the lemon cleaner the janitorial staff used. The framed certificates on the wall watched her as she crossed to her desk and sat. The folder with Ethan's name lay where she had left it, slightly askew. She set it aside for the moment and woke her computer. The screen flared to life bright in the dim room. Her own reflection floated briefly on the black glass before the desktop replaced it. She opened the internal security portal. It was not part of her usual routine. Most days she treated the cameras as background, a fact of modern office life. Today, the memory of the little red light in the corners of ceilings and lobbies felt like something else. She logged in with her admin credentials. A warning banner flashed up about the sensitivity of the system. She clicked past it, heart beating a little faster. A grid of camera feeds loaded across the screen. Tiny rectangles of hallways, entrances, stairwells, empty offices. Each had a label and a timestamp in the corner. She minimized most of them and navigated to the archive. A form popped up asking for date, time, and camera number. She glanced at the printout she had made earlier. The edit on Ethan's report had happened 5 days ago at 10:43 a.m. She entered the date and time, adding a 15-minute buffer on either side. Camera. She chose the one assigned to the supervisor's workstation area near Trent's desk. The system took a few seconds to retrieve the file. The spinning icon felt longer than any hold music. Finally, the footage appeared. A static view of a row of cubicles, the tops of computer monitors, the edge of a whiteboard with numbers scrawled in blue marker. The timestamp ticked in the corner, minutes rolling. At first, the only movement was a distant figure passing the far doorway pushing a cart. A shadow crossed the wall. Someone sat briefly at one desk, then stood and left. She clicked the speed control, pushing it to 2 times normal. People became slightly faster versions of themselves, blurred motions on fast forward. At 10:39, Trent entered the frame. He carried a stack of papers in one arm and a coffee in the other. He set the cup down, dropped into his chair, and woke his computer. His face was small and grainy, but the outline was familiar. She slowed the footage to normal speed. He typed a password. The monitor glowed. She could not see the screen, only the way its light reflected faintly on his features. He pulled a folder from the stack, opened it, read something, then turned back to the keyboard. His hand reached for the mouse. His gaze sharpened with the focus of someone working on a task that mattered to them. The timestamp clicked to 10:43. He leaned closer to the monitor. His fingers moved across the keys in a way that even in silence and at this distance looked deliberate, not like someone correcting a spelling error. She could not see the words on the document, but she did not need to. The system log she had already pulled told her what file he had open. He paused once to sip his coffee, then returned to the keyboard. At one point he sat back, read, then leaned forward again, hands moving. It went on for several minutes. There was no panic in his posture, no sign that he was cleaning up a mess in a hurry. He looked almost relaxed. When he finally saved the file and closed the window, the timestamp in the corner read 10:51. Madison sat still for a moment after the footage ended, watching the frozen image of his empty chair. She clicked back and replayed the sequence, this time slowly just to be sure of the times. Then she pulled out a small external drive from her desk drawer and plugged it in. A new icon appeared on her desktop. She exported the selected clip. The progress bar crept from left to right. When it reached the end, she labeled the file with the date, time, and camera number, then saved it in a folder she named simply Review. That was one piece. She leaned back in her chair and rubbed her eyes with the heels of her hands. The screen left ghost images behind her lids, pale grids, small rectangles of motion. She dropped her hands and navigated to another camera, the break room. She entered the same date, choosing a window of time beginning just after the edit had concluded. If Trent had wanted to brag, he would have done it where he felt comfortable. The break room feed loaded, fluorescent light, a row of microwaves, a refrigerator with a company logo magnet, a round table with 3 chairs. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then 2 supervisors walked in laughing at something, cups in hand. An older man she recognized from quality control, a woman from logistics. They poured coffee, chatted. At 11:07, Trent entered the frame. He grabbed the pot, filled his cup, added cream. He said something as he stirred. The others laughed. His shoulders relaxed. There was no audio, but the rhythm of the conversation was visible in their bodies. A question, a punchline, someone pretending to be scandalized. Madison watched their mouths move, their hands gesture. It was maddening to be this close and still not hear the words. She selected the option to enable the system's audio track. A warning popped up, reminding her that recorded sound was restricted to specific locations and might be low quality. She clicked accept. The speakers on her monitor hissed faintly as the track engaged. Static, a low hum from the vending machine, the clatter of a spoon against ceramic. The first few lines were useless, swallowed by the noise of the room. Then the levels adjusted and voices emerged. "I am telling you," came Trent's voice, sharper than the others. The camera was in the corner of the ceiling. It caught the top half of his face as he leaned against the counter, cup in hand. The audio synced with the image. "Finally got rid of him," he said. "Who?" the older man asked. "Ward," Trent replied. "Maintenance boy who thought he knew more than his supervisor." Madison felt her fingers tighten on the mouse. "What did he do?" the woman asked. "I thought HR was sitting on the fence." "They were," Trent said, "until I gave them something they could not argue with." He took a sip of coffee, smirked. "Got witnesses," he added. "Dates, times, the whole thing. The guy practically wrote his own exit." The older man whistled under his breath. "You did not worry he would fight it?" he asked. Trent shrugged. "Fight with what?" he said. "On paper, he is exactly what the report says he is. HR signed off. The witnesses signed off. He can yell all he wants. It will not matter." The woman laughed, a little uneasy. "Sounds risky," she said. "What if someone checks?" Trent waved his free hand. "No one checks," he said. "They do not have time. They see the boxes, ticked the signatures in the right places, and it is done. They like clean endings." The older man lowered his voice, but the microphone caught enough. "You sure the kid deserved that?" he asked. "He always seemed solid to me." Trent's smile disappeared for a moment. "He made me look bad," he said, "in front of my own crew, correcting me, fixing things his way. You let that stand, it spreads. People start thinking they can second-guess every call. That is not how you run a floor." The woman shifted her weight. "Could not you just write him up?" she asked. "Tried that," Trent said. 4 times. HR wanted more." He took another drink. "So I gave them more." There was a note of satisfaction in his voice that made Madison's stomach knot. The conversation drifted after that back to weather and holiday plans. He left the break room at 11:14, taking his confidence with him. Madison sat very still. Outside her office, the hallway was quiet, the kind of quiet that made every small sound inside her walls louder. The hum of her computer fan, the faint buzz of the overhead light, her own breathing. She rewound the audio and listened again, this time, noting the exact times. She typed phrases out verbatim into her document. Not just the facts, but the wording. "No one checks. Clean endings. He made me look bad." Her finger hovered over the replay icon. She wanted to hear it a third time to be sure. She did not need to. Her brain had already stored it. She exported this clip as well, adding it to the folder on the external drive. When it finished, she unplugged the device and held it in her hand for a moment. The drive was small, barely larger than her thumb. It looked fragile. It held more than the paper file on her desk had ever revealed. She set it gently in the inner pocket of her bag, the one she used for her wallet and keys. The cursor blinked on the open document on her screen. She added a final line to the growing outline. "Security footage corroborates timeline and intent of document alteration. Audio recording indicates motive unrelated to safety." She saved the file. When she finally shut down her computer, the monitor went dark. Her reflection appeared briefly in the blank glass. The office window reflected the interior lights, turning them into small squares, floating over the ghost of the city behind them. She turned off the desk lamp. The room dropped into a softer shadow. Only the hallway light outside and the red glow of the power strip near the floor remained. As she walked down the corridor, the emergency lights painted faint streaks along the walls. The camera at the far end blinked its red signal steady and unblinking. She met its gaze for a second, then continued on her hand, closing around the strap of her bag, fingers pressing into the place where the small drive rested against the fabric. The sky was still the color of aluminum when Madison woke, a flat, dull brightness leaking around the edges of her blinds. For a few seconds she lay still, the memory of the security footage replaying itself behind her eyelids, Trent's voice drifting through the break room, confident and sure. "Finally got rid of him." She pushed the covers back and sat up. The floor was cold under her feet. In the kitchen, the coffee maker sputtered to life, filling the apartment with the smell of roasted beans. She drank her first cup standing by the window, fingers wrapped around the mug city lights, winking out one by one as the pale winter day took over. The external drive lay on the counter where she had set her bag the night before. Small, black, unremarkable. She picked it up and turned it once between her fingers before slipping it into the inside pocket of her blazer. On the drive to work, she caught every red light. Each stop left her alone with her thoughts in the hush of the car, the heater blowing lukewarm air at her boots. At one intersection, she found her hand on the wheel, in the same tight grip she had used in the garage the night before. At North River, the lobby buzzed with low holiday energy. Someone had set up a small artificial tree near the entrance decorated with company-colored ornaments. A tin of cookies sat open on the security desk. "You look like you are headed into something serious," the guard said as she passed. A meeting, Madison replied. Is he... Those count, he said. On the third floor, the conference room at the far end of the corridor had been prepared early. The long table shone under recessed lighting. Carafes of coffee and pitchers of water stood at the center, surrounded by neat stacks of notepads and pens. The blinds were half open, revealing a gray cityscape streaked with the faint lines of falling snow. She was not the first to arrive. 2 board members sat near the head of the table, already one scrolling through a tablet, the other flipping through printed financials. They nodded in her direction in the polite, distant way of people who knew her title more than her. "Morning, Madison," said the woman at the far end. "We appreciate the short notice." "Thank you for making time," Madison said. Eleanor Pierce arrived a few minutes later, a wool coat over her suit, white hair pulled back from her face in a simple twist. For a founder, she moved without fuss. No entourage, no visible impatience. She took her seat at the head of the table, set her glasses on the polished wood, and looked around. All right, she said. "We are here." Trent slid into the chair near the other end of the table, as if he had been there all along, posture relaxed, tie knotted perfectly. He met Madison's eyes briefly, offered a thin smile, then faced forward. The HR representative from legal sat halfway down a folder in front of her pen, already uncapped. "Ms. Reyes, you requested this review," Eleanor said. "You have the floor." Madison stood. Her knees felt steady, which surprised her. She opened the folder she had brought, spreading the printed pages out in a sequence that made sense in her mind. "Thank you," she said. "I will keep this as clear as possible." She began with the report itself. 1 copy of the original draft, 1 copy of the final version. She did not embellish. She let the differences show in the way the margins shifted on the page and the extra paragraphs in the added witness names. She walked them through the revision history, dates, times, the log entries with Trent's user ID beside them. She passed copies of those logs down the table. She summarized her conversations with the witnesses. Dalton, who did not recall writing any statement, Chen, who had never signed anything, Alvarez, who admitted signing under pressure. "I do not name employees lightly," she said, but in this case, Ms. Alvarez described being asked to sign a document that did not reflect her experience with an implied threat to her job if she refused. She felt Trent's gaze on her a steady weight, but she did not look toward him. All of this supports the conclusion that the report used to terminate Mr. Ward was not an accurate record of events, she said. It was constructed to meet termination criteria. A murmur moved along the line of executives. Someone tapped a pen. Someone else leaned back, arms crossed. Eleanor steepled her fingers. "And your evidence for that conclusion?" she asked. Madison reached into her pocket and produced the external drive. The plastic felt warm from her body heat now, not cold as it had in her kitchen. "I accessed the security archives," she said, "on the date the report was edited. I found footage that shows Mr. Calloway working on a document at the exact time the revision log records the changes to Mr. Ward's file." She nodded toward the IT support person who had slipped in at the back of the room. He took the drive from her and connected it to the system. The wall screen at the far end blinked awake. The footage of the supervisor workstation area filled the display. The timestamp glowed in the bottom corner. Trent appeared on screen sitting at his desk, coffee in hand. The room fell quiet. The faint hum of the projector was the only sound for a moment. "As you can see," Madison said, keeping her voice level, "Mr. Calloway accesses a document for several minutes. The revision logs confirm that document is the incident report for Mr. Ward." She nodded at the IT tech who paused the video. "The second clip," Madison said, "is from the break room shortly after the edits are complete. It includes audio." When the video resumed, the boardroom speakers filled with the hiss of background static, then Trent's recorded voice. "Finally got rid of him." The words dropped into the boardroom air heavier than they had in her office. Out of the grainy black and white, Trent's smirk took on a harder edge. "He made me look bad. Got witnesses. No one checks. They like clean endings." Madison did not look at the real Trent as his echo carried on the screen. She watched Eleanor instead. The older woman's jaw tightened by a degree. Her eyes narrowed behind her glasses. When the clip ended, the room was very still. The IT tech froze the image on the screen, leaving the break room in mid-frame coffee pot halfway back onto its burner. Eleanor turned her head slowly toward Trent. "Mr. Calloway," she said, "do you care to explain what we just heard?" He cleared his throat, shifting in his chair for the first time. "That is not the whole conversation," he said. You are hearing bits and pieces, jokes between colleagues. No one seems to be laughing in that segment, the logistics executive said softly. Trent forced a short laugh. Look, everyone, Vince, he said. I was dramatizing. Ward was a problem on the floor. We all know that. I was expressing frustration. That does not mean the report is false. Madison finally let her gaze rest on him. You said no one checks, she said. You assured your colleagues HR signed off without question. He turned toward her. I said they signed off because I trusted the process, he said. You had the report. You saw the same things I did. If there was an issue, that is on both of us. The words were a pivot. He threw them into the center of the table like a card he believed would shift the game. Which raises a point, he continued smoothly, turning his attention back to Eleanor. Why now? Eleanor's brows lifted slightly. Now? She repeated. Yes, he said. This termination was processed days ago. HR had every opportunity to flag anything unusual at the time. Instead, Ms. Reyes approved it. Then suddenly after the fact, she decides to tear it apart. She is visiting the guy at his home, showing up where he volunteers, dragging floor staff into side conversations. Madison felt every eye in the room flicker back to her. I visited Mr. Ward once at his apartment, she said, and once at the community center where he was working. Both times to inform him that I was reviewing his file and to attempt to mitigate the immediate impact of a termination that may have been unjust. Trent spread his hands. Personal contact, he said, outside the workplace, with a terminated employee. That is a boundary issue for HR, is it not? The legal counsel shifted in her chair. Context matters, she began, but Trent was already pressing on. It looks less like objective process and more like a personal crusade, he said. I have heard from several people that she seemed very invested in this one case, very emotional. He let that last word hang in the air, heavy with implication. Are you suggesting impropriety, Mr. Calloway? Eleanor asked. I am suggesting we broaden the lens, he said. Before we ruin a supervisor's career over one audio clip, maybe we should ask why the HR director is bending over backward for a floor tech she has suddenly taken an interest in. The logistics executive shifted uncomfortably. The finance director exchanged a quick glance with the head of operations. Doubt had slipped into the room, thin and quick. Madison felt it land. Her skin prickled. Her next words needed to be clear. My interest is in the integrity of our processes, she said, not in any individual employee. Yes, sir. Trent smiled slow. Is that how it will look when this hits the rumor mill? He asked softly. HR director spends nights visiting a fired worker, then shows up here with security footage. I can hear the story already. Madison opened her mouth to respond, but the boardroom door swung inward before she could speak. A man stood in the doorway, slightly out of breath, his hand still on the handle, as if he had pushed it open with more force than necessary. Ethan. His hair was damp from snow, his coat zipped all the way to his throat. Beside him, half hidden by the edge of the door, Lily clutched his hand. Her knit hat sat crooked over her ears, a small backpack bouncing against her back. For a second, no one moved. The receptionist hovered behind them, flustered. I am sorry, she said. They were very insistent. I told them you were in a meeting, but he asked to speak to whoever was in charge, and I did not realize. It is all right, Eleanor said. Her voice cut neatly through the confusion. She gestured toward the empty chairs by the wall. Mr. Ward, I assume, she said. Assured. Yes, Ethan answered. His voice was steady, but his grip on Lily's hand had not loosened. I am Eleanor Pierce, she said. We are in the middle of an internal review that concerns you. You may stay if you wish. This is your right as much as it is ours. Trent seized on the opening. You see, he said, he walks right into a board meeting with a child in tow. This is exactly the lack of boundaries I'm talking about. Ethan turned his head toward him. I did not know this was a board meeting, he said. I asked to speak to someone about why I was fired. My daughter insisted on coming. I did not bring her here to make a point. He looked at Madison briefly, confusion and something like hurt flickering there when he saw the room, the faces the screen still frozen on a frame of Trent in the break room. This is not how I imagined this conversation, he added. Lily pressed closer to his leg, overwhelmed by the large table, the serious adults, the strange room with its high ceiling and quiet air. Why is everyone mad? She whispered, just loud enough to carry. We are having a discussion, Ethan said, his voice low. It is all right. Trent leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. This is exactly what I mean, he said. He is dragging a kid into corporate proceedings. Lily's head turned sharply at the word. Her gaze settled on Trent. She frowned, the small line between her brows making her look older for a heartbeat. "You are the angry man," she said. Silence spread around the table like water. "Lily," Ethan murmured. She did not look up at him. Her eyes stayed on Trent, wide and dark. "You are saying mean things about Dad's friend," she said. "You said he did bad things. He did not." Her voice wobbled on the last word, but did not break. "Lily," Ethan said again gently, "this is not how we talk here. He fixes things," she went on as if she had not heard him. "He fixed Mrs. Halpern's heat when it was cold and she did not have money. He fixes our car. He fixes other people's stuff when they cannot pay someone else. He is not bad." Her hand tightened on Ethan's. "He has been sad," she added softer. "You took his Christmas." For a moment, the polished wood table, the carafes, the notepads, all of it seemed slightly less solid. The executives at the far end shifted some, looking down, some away. The logistics executive pressed her lips together, eyes suddenly bright. Trent's mouth opened then closed. Whatever retort he had prepared did not quite fit the space a 7-year-old's words had just carved out. Ethan crouched down beside his daughter, bringing his face level with hers. "Hey," he said quietly, "you did good. You stood up. Now, let me talk for a bit, all right?" She nodded, eyes hot, cheeks flushed. He stood turned to face the table. He did not bother to smooth his coat or adjust his posture. He simply stood the way he did when he was about to lift something heavy. "I came here to say my piece," he said. "I did not know Ms. Reyes had already brought you all of this." He nodded toward the frozen image on the screen, where Trent's reflection still hovered above the coffee machine. "But she did," he said, "which means you know now what I only suspected, that someone used the system to get rid of me because I spoke up." He let his gaze move around the table, meeting eyes where he could. "I can find another job," he said. "I have done it before. After my wife died, I started from nothing, with a 2-year-old in my arms and a stack of bills higher than this table. We made it." Lily pressed her face into the side of his leg, but she stayed standing. "But she," he nodded toward Madison, "has more to lose here than I do. She put her name on that first report because she trusted the process. When she realized it was wrong, she came to my door. She sat in my kitchen. She came to the community center where I was working and told me she was going to fix it, even if it meant standing up to somebody she works with every day." He drew a breath. "I told her I did not want her money," he said. "I still do not. But I will say this. If you punish her for doing the right thing after finding out she had done the wrong thing, then every poster on your walls about integrity is a lie." The finance director shifted, looking down at his notepad. The legal counsel's pen, which had been poised in midair, dropped to the paper. Ethan's voice stayed steady. "You want to let me go," he said. "Say you do not need my skills. Say you have someone cheaper. I will not like it, but I will understand it. Do not let a man keep his job because he is willing to fake reports and take hers because she was willing to admit she was wrong and fix it." He put a hand on Lily's shoulder. "And do not make me explain to her why the people who talk about doing the right thing chose not to." The room held its breath. Eleanor sat very still. The lines at the corners of her eyes looked deeper in the overhead light, but her gaze was clear. "Mr. Calloway," she said at last, turning toward Trent, "please wait outside." He blinked. "I do not think that is necessary," he began. "It is," she said. "You will have an opportunity to respond after we speak with HR and legal. For now, I would like you out of this room." Her tone left no room for argument. Trent's chair scraped a little too loudly as he pushed it back. He walked to the door, jaw-clenched eyes fixed straight ahead. He passed Ethan without looking at him. The door closed behind him with a firm, final click. Eleanor turned back to Madison. "Can you verify everything you have presented here with documentation that would stand up to an external review?" she asked. "Yes," Madison said. Her voice felt raw but steady. "I have system logs, copies of the report's witness statements. I have the security footage and audio on that drive. I am prepared to give all of it to legal." Eleanor nodded once. "Do so," she said. Then she looked at Ethan and Lily. "You two may sit," she said, gesturing to the chairs along the wall. "This concerns you. You have a right to hear how we proceed." Lily wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. Ethan guided her to a chair. She climbed up, feet not quite touching the floor, backpack still on her shoulders. Madison took her seat again, the folder open in front of her, the keys in her pocket pressing cool against her palm. The board members flipped to fresh pages on their notepads. The legal counsel uncapped her pen again. The conversation shifted, no longer a question of whether something had happened, but what the company would do about it now. They did not drag it out. Once the clips were on the record and the logs were printed, the machine that had moved so slowly before began to move with an uncomfortable speed. Emails flew between legal and IT. Calendars shifted. Meetings appeared and disappeared on Madison's screen as departments were pulled into the gravity of what had been laid on the table. For 3 days, she lived in conference rooms. She sat with the internal investigator while he played the audio again, stopping and starting to note exact timestamps. She watched lawyers in neat suits flip through page after page of the incident report, their pens scratching in the margins. She saw her own signature under the word termination and did not look away. They brought in Dalton Chen and Alvarez this time with official forms and a neutral third party in the room. Maria's hands trembled when she spoke, but her voice did not break. She repeated what she had told Madison in the warehouse, and this time, someone wrote it down as evidence. Trent was interviewed separately. Madison did not see that session. She only heard about it in fragments, phrases that drifted back through the building afterward. Misinterpretation, miscommunication, overzealous documentation. No one repeated his words from the break room. On Friday morning, Eleanor called a smaller group into her office. Madison Legal Operations. The door closed. The blinds remained open winter light, lying pale along the edge of the desk. "It is clear," Eleanor said, "that the report used to terminate Mr. Ward cannot stand as a truthful document. It is equally clear that Mr. Calloway knowingly manipulated that report to achieve a result he had been denied through proper channels." The legal counsel nodded. "There is enough to terminate for cause," she said. "We also have grounds to refer this to the district attorney for potential charges, fraud, possibly coercion." Eleanor did not smile. There was nothing in the moment that invited it. "Prepare the paperwork," she said. "Revoke his access before you hand it to him." By noon, Trent's name no longer opened doors. His badge, once a convenient extension of his authority, returned a small red blink at every reader. Madison happened to be in the lobby when he walked out for the last time. It was not intentional. She had come down to meet with legal, then found herself at the edge of the tile as the elevator doors opened and Trent stepped through. He carried a cardboard box. A framed certificate stuck up at one corner. His coffee mug was inside, rim chipped. A plant with drooping leaves wobbled with each step. He did not look at her. She did not speak. They passed within 5 feet of each other, close enough for her to see the flush high on his cheekbones, the tightness around his mouth. The automatic doors opened. The cold reached in. He stepped out into it, the box shifting in his arms. The doors closed again, cutting off the sound of his footsteps on the salted concrete. Madison stood very still for a moment, the heat of the building at her back, the memory of his voice in the break room echoing against the quiet lobby. Then she turned away. In the afternoon, she sat in a different conference room, a smaller one with a view of the parking lot and a crooked poster about workplace safety on the wall. Ethan sat across from her. His coat was folded on the chair beside him. He looked tired, like he had not quite believed this meeting would happen until the moment he walked in and saw the folder on the table. Lily occupied the 2 chairs by the window, curled sideways legs swinging a coloring book, open on her knees. She had insisted on coming again. This time, Madison had not tried to argue. Ethan had looked like he did not have the energy to fight his daughter's determination. On the table between them lay a new set of papers. "Mr. Ward," Madison said, hands resting flat on the folder. "North River has completed its review of your termination." He watched her wary. "We have concluded," she went on, "that the report used to justify that termination was falsified. As of today, the company is reversing the decision. You are being reinstated with full back pay from the date your employment ended. You will also receive additional compensation for the period you were out of work." She slid the letter toward him. The paper made a soft sound as it moved. He did not pick it up right away. He stared at it as if it might vanish if he blinked. "This is not a joke," he said. "It is not," she said. He reached for the letter. His fingertips brushed the logo at the top, the neat lines of text. He read in silence. With each paragraph, the lines at the corners of his eyes shifted, not smoothing, but rearranging. "There is also a change in position," Madison said. "You are being offered a promotion to shift supervisor. It comes with a salary increase, full benefits, and more regular hours." His eyes flicked up. "Supervisor," he repeated. "Operations has reviewed your work history," she said. "Your technical record speaks for itself. Several crew members have already gone on record saying they trust you. The company would rather have you leading a team than losing you entirely." He let out a breath that sounded almost like someone letting the air out of a tire, slow and disbelieving. "I do not know what to say," he admitted. "You do not have to say anything right now," she said. You can take this home, look it over, talk to whoever you need to. He glanced toward the window. Lily had stopped coloring. She was watching his face with an intensity that made her look older. Blue crayon poised above the page, forgotten. Does this mean, she asked, that they gave your Christmas back? The room went quiet for a beat. Ethan's mouth twitched. It means we can pay the rent, he said. But can we get a tree taller than me? She asked. You said if we had extra we could get a tall one, not a short one, that sits on a box. Ethan looked at Madison as if she might know the answer to that. Your finances are your business, Madison said, a small smile at the edge of her mouth. But the numbers on that page should make more things possible. Lily swung her legs, already doing calculations of her own that had nothing to do with rent or utilities. I will be taller next year, she said, so the tree should be taller this year, to keep up. Ethan laughed, a short, incredulous sound that broke through the stiffness in his shoulders. We will see what we can do, he told her. He signed the acceptance line before he left. The pen looked too small in his hand. When they stepped out into the hallway, the fluorescent lights hummed above them, as they always had. The difference was inside. Thank you, he said to Madison near the elevator. He did not dress the words up. They came out simple and sincere. Thank the evidence, she replied, and the people who backed it up. And you, he said. She did not argue with that. After they were gone, the hallway felt oddly empty. She returned to her office with the signed copy of the letter and placed it carefully in his file. The folder looked different now, not in thickness, but in weight. One paper had tried to define him. Another had pulled that definition apart. Later that day, Eleanor called her up to the top floor. The CEO's office had large windows that looked out over the city. Snow had slowed to a drift, soft flakes moving lazily past the glass. Eleanor stood by the window when Madison entered, hands in the pockets of her blazer. Come in, she said. Sit. Madison took the chair opposite the desk. For the record, Eleanor said, you handled this well once you realized something was wrong. Madison shifted, feeling both grateful and undeserving. I should have caught it earlier, she said. Maybe, Eleanor said, but you did catch it. You followed it through. You risked your own standing to do it. That matters. She moved to her chair, sat and folded her hands on the desk. Legal is moving ahead with the recommendation to pursue charges against Mr. Calloway, she said. The board will support that. We will communicate carefully with staff. We will adjust our internal controls so that one motivated supervisor cannot manipulate the system so easily again. Madison nodded. Part of her had come to the same conclusions already. Hearing it from the top settled it into place. As for you, Eleanor went on, there will be no disciplinary action, quite the opposite. I intend to note your conduct here in your file. Integrity under pressure is not as common as one would hope. Madison felt some of the tension she had been carrying since that first meeting in HR finally ease. Thank you, she said. There is one more piece, Eleanor said. Perception. Madison knew the word before it left her mouth. Yes, she said. Your visits to Mr. Ward, your presence at his apartment, the community center, the fact that his daughter now knows your name. All of that can be explained. In context, it makes sense. But people like simple stories. They compress details until only the outline is left. Eleanor leaned back slightly. I am not telling you who you can see outside of this building, she said. That is not my place. I am asking you as the head of HR to consider some space for a while. There are people who will be watching for any sign that you let your personal feelings for this case influence your professional decisions. Madison thought of Lily's head on her shoulder, heavy with sleep. She thought of Ethan's hands in the soapy water, the way he had asked her if she was sure she wanted to do this. I understand, she said. Eleanor studied her for a moment. When I started this company, she said, the rules were mostly in my head. We wrote them down as we went. We got some right and some wrong. The one I tried to keep in front was simple. We do not ruin people to make the numbers look better. She tapped the desk lightly. We strayed from that here, she said. You pulled us back. I am not going to forget that. Neither should you. Madison nodded. When she left the office, the hallway outside looked the same as it always had. Neutral carpet frame photos of smiling employees, the company logo etched in glass at the end. She walked past them with her bag on her shoulder, the external drive now emptied of its burden, the echo of Eleanor's words in her ears. On her way out of the building, she passed the small tree in the lobby. Someone had added a string of colored lights since the last time she had seen it. One bulb flickered intermittently, threatening to go out, then glowing steady again. She paused for a second, hand brushing the strap of her bag, then stepped into the cold where the late afternoon light was already thinning, and the air smelled of snow and exhaust and something like relief. The building felt different the next day. The rush of crisis had passed. People moved through the halls with their usual pre-holiday distractions, arms full of gift bags and leftover cookies on paper plates. In HR, someone had set a bowl of candy canes by the copier. The red and white stripes gleamed under the fluorescent light. Madison sat at her desk with her office door half open, the quiet hum of the floor drifting in. Her computer screen showed her inbox full of messages that had nothing to do with incident reports or security footage, vacation approvals, policy questions, a department head asking if it was too late to move an evaluation to January. Beside her monitor, propped against the base of the lamp, was a drawing. Lily had thrust it into her hands on the way out of the meeting room 2 days ago, cheeks still damp, eyes brighter now. "So you do not forget us," she had said. Crayons had filled the page. 3 stick figures under a tall green triangle with a star on top. One figure had spiky hair. One had long lines for hair. The smallest one stood between them, arms stretched wide, fingers touching both. Underneath, in careful wobbly letters, Lily had written, "Thank you." Madison traced the edge of the paper with one finger, careful not to smudge the waxy lines. On the other side of the desk, her HR certification hung in its usual place on the wall. In the photo, a younger version of herself smiled at the camera holding the framed certificate for the first time. The smile looked wide and sure. A light knock sounded on the doorframe. She turned. Ethan stood there, one hand on the jamb, the other shoved loosely into his coat pocket. Snow dotted the shoulders of the coat, melting into dark spots. He had the look of someone who had hesitated outside for a full minute before committing to crossing the threshold. "Is this a bad time?" he asked. "No," she said. "Come in." He stepped inside, closing the door gently behind him, as if he did not want the sound to carry. "I tried to catch you yesterday," he said. "They said you were in meetings." "That sounds right," she said. He glanced at the drawing by the lamp. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "She worked hard on that," he said. "It shows," Madison replied. "Tell her I like the hair she gave me." "She said that is how you looked when you walked into the room," he said. "Like your hair was thinking faster than everyone else." Madison felt a laugh rise, unexpected and warm. "That is one way to put it," she said. He shifted his weight. The easy humor faded back into something more careful. "I wanted to say thank you again," he said. "In person, not with you across a table and 10 other people in suits watching." "You already said it," she said. "I know," he answered. "I am saying it again anyway." He glanced down at his hands, then back up. "I know you were asked to keep some distance," he said. "I get that. I do not want to make your job harder than it has to be." The CEO's words from her office floated back to her. "Perception. Space." "You are not making it easier," Madison said dryly. He winced. "That is not what I meant to do," he said. She softened her tone. "I know," she said. He took a breath. "There is a tree lighting tonight at Loring Park," he said. "Big one. Choir, mayor, the whole thing." "I have seen the flyers," she said. "Lily has been talking about it all week," he went on. She circled the date on the calendar so hard she tore the paper. Madison could picture that. The little girl leaning on the fridge door marker, pressing through the thin square of the month. "She asked if you could come," he said. She was very specific. She said, and I am quoting, that you should see the big lights too, not just the work lights. He rubbed the back of his neck. "I told her it might not be a good idea," he said, "because of how things are in here, because of how it might look." She stared at me like I had just told her snow was canceled. Madison smiled despite herself. "That is a serious accusation," she said. "Yeah," he said, "so I promised I would at least ask." He met her eyes. "No pressure," he added quickly. "If it is better for you to say no, say no. I can handle that. Lily will sulk for an hour and then find something else to be excited about. She is 7. She is built out of excitement." He tried for a joke at his own expense, but his gaze stayed steady on hers. There was more in it, an offer, a question. She thought of her empty apartment, the perfect silent tree in the corner, the way the television filled the room with other people's stories while she sat alone at the edge of the couch. She thought of Lily's drawing the 3 figures under the tree. "What time?" Madison asked. He blinked as if he had prepared himself harder for a no than for a yes. 6, he said. "They say the lights go on at 6:30. "Okay," she said. "I will be there." His shoulders dropped, half an inch, tension easing out of them. "She is going to be insufferable when she hears that," he said. "I think I can live with that," Madison replied. Snow was already falling again when she crossed the street into Loring Park that evening. The air carried the smell of wood smoke from somewhere, mingling with the sweetness of cider and fried dough from the vendor carts lining the path. Families moved along the cleared walkway, bundled in coats and scarves, boots crunching on packed snow. Children darted in and out of the crowd, voices rising high over the low murmur of adult conversation. At the center of the park, the tree towered over everything, its branches a dark silhouette against the pale sky. Strands of lights were looped through it from top to bottom, still unlit, waiting. Madison pulled her scarf higher and scanned the crowd. She spotted Lily first. The pink hat bobbed up and down near the front, close to the ropes that kept people from crowding the base of the tree. She was hopping in place to keep warm mittens slapping against her thighs. Ethan stood behind her, hands tucked into his coat pockets, eyes scanning the same crowd from the opposite direction. Lily saw Madison at almost the same moment. "She came," Lily shouted, waving both arms. "Dad, she came, she came." Madison picked her way through the cluster of people. Snow squeaked under her boots. As she approached, Lily launched herself forward and grabbed her hand, tugging. "You are not late," Lily said. "They did not start yet. You have the best spot. We saved it." "Hi," Ethan said, the words softened by relief. "Hi," Madison replied. They stood in a row, then the three of them facing the tree. Lily kept hold of Madison's hand as if afraid she might drift away. "How did your first shift as supervisor go?" Madison asked, raising her voice slightly to be heard over the loudspeaker where someone from the city parks department was making announcements. "Strange," he said. "I am used to being the one under the machines, not the one signing off on who gets to fix them." "Did the machines listen to you?" she asked. He smiled a little. "Better than some people," he said, "but I will get there." She believed him. The mayor took the microphone and began a short speech about community and light in dark months. Madison only caught half the words. Her attention drifted to the small details instead. The way Ethan's breath came out in steady clouds. The way Lily's hat was already dusted with snow, tiny flakes that clung to the yarn. The way the crowd's shifting weight created a low, constant hush, like the sea in a shell. Around them, the park lights glowed softly, waiting for their brighter companion. "Do you think they will have fireworks too?" Lily asked, bouncing on her toes. "Not tonight," Ethan said. "Just the tree." "The tree is enough," she decided. The mayor finished. A countdown began, the numbers rising from different corners of the park as people picked them up. 10, 9, 8. Lily let go of Madison's hand only long enough to reach for Ethan's, grabbing one of his gloved fingers. 7, 6. She looked up at Madison. "Give me your hand," she commanded. Madison offered it. Lily took it with both of hers and pulled, stepping closer until she could press their hands together, Ethan's and Madison's, palm to palm. 5, 4. "Stay like that," Lily said. "For the lights." Madison's first instinct was to pull back. Eleanor's voice flickered at the edge of her thoughts. Perception, space. People like simple stories. Ethan's hand was warm even through the gloves. His fingers curled lightly, not trapping, not forcing, just there. 3, 2. He tilted his head, voice pitched low enough that only she could hear. "We can step apart if you want," he murmured. "Right after." 1. The tree exploded into color. Thousands of tiny bulbs flared to life at once, chasing the dusk off the park in a single bright rush. The branches glowed red and gold and white. The crowd let out a collective sound, somewhere between a cheer and a breath. Lily gasped, eyes wide, face tipped up to the blaze of color. "It is like daytime, but better," she said. Snow spun through the light, each flake catching and reflecting as it fell. For a moment, the air itself seemed full of small, hanging stars. Madison felt her throat tighten. She kept her hand in Ethan's. He looked over at her, the reflection of the lights turning his eyes a shade lighter. The strain that had lived around his mouth for days was different now. Not gone, but loosened. "I do not know what this is," he said quietly. "I do not know what it is supposed to look like. Me, you, her." He glanced down at Lily, then back. "But when she asked me who I trust in that building, your name was the only one we both said at the same time." Madison let the words settle. "I do not know either," she said. "I just know I am standing here, and it feels like I am supposed to be." She did not dress it up. She did not turn it into a promise. She let it be what it was. Lily edged closer, squirming between them, until she could tuck herself under both their arms. Ethan shifted automatically to make room, his arm coming around her shoulders. Madison did the same, her gloved hand resting briefly on the top of Lily's hat. From behind, they would look like three shapes under the spill of colored light. One tall one, slightly shorter one, small and buzzing with quiet joy. Above them, the tree burned steady against the winter sky. Somewhere back in Ethan's apartment, a metal key hung from a thin branch of a small artificial tree, catching its own share of light. In one pocket of Lily's coat was a folded piece of paper with 3 stick figures and a green triangle drawn in crayon edges worn from being taken out and looked at over and over. In Loring Park, under the bright wash of bulbs and drifting snow, Madison held on to Ethan's hand a little tighter and did not let go until Lily pulled them both toward the cider stand, chattering about how the lights made everything taste better. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.